Welcome to the Bayesian Conspiracy. I'm Eneasz Brodsky.
I'm Steven Zuber.
I'm Jay Sticky.
And we are all back together, a trio once again. So we can really dive into Georgist Land Taxes today, but we're not going to do that until we cover a few bits of feedback. The first bit of feedback is from Jan Christian Refsgaard? Refsgaard, okay. Talking about the unions.
We talked about unions and coal miners and how they... I like this context for it.
Yeah.
Because I'm talking totally up my ass on this stuff, which is like having a vague idea that unions were great, and then you guys convinced me that they were wrong, that they were bad.
Right.
And then I was like, aw.
Yeah.
And so it's because I didn't have any real solid knowledge. I was very easily persuaded. But this is fucking crazy. Mm-hmm. Apparently, they were paid, instead of money, they're given like company script of like, you know, here, have some whatever company bucks. You guys can buy stuff at the commissary with it.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of inferring from what he calls what Jan
that's
says
basically
here
what it was, yes.
Yeah, pay in US dollars instead of company script so we can actually work for your competitor without losing all our money.
That was one of their demands. Yeah.
Which I think is a totally reasonable demand. You should
Absolutely.
be paid in US currency if you work here.
What is company script?
It's like, you know, Amazon bucks.
Okay.
Or
yeah,
Kohl's dollars, you know?
I'm just wondering, what can you buy with Kohl dollars, I guess?
I mean, just Kohl's clothes, but with Amazon bucks, you could buy literally anything, as long as it's from Amazon.
If you're a coal miner...
Coal. Well, they had their own on-site or in-town stores, which supposedly had everything you needed, but also could charge, you know, prices that were not competitive because you have to buy at the store. You can't take your script into a different town and buy stuff there.
That sounds really...
It was complete
exploitable.
Bullshit. Yeah, it was...
exploitative.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. They're like, let's set all the prices so we take back all our script every month. And then the other, about 50% of their demands were about the weight of coal as the company supplies the scales that weighs the coal, personnel and carts to measure coal, and they got paid by the ton. And also they would even change what the definition of a ton was. So they just got cheated a lot. And I wanted to pull this out because the unions actually did a lot of good stuff back in the past. Because this shit was complete bullshit.
I could see this sort of stuff being instructive. I imagine that there are beneficial cases for unions today. You know, I think that probably the only reason that Amazon workers aren't paid in Amazon bucks is because it's illegal.
Is it illegal?
I'm not sure.
Illegal.
I would have to think that it is, because if it wasn't, they definitely would be paid in Amazon bucks.
I don't know. Do you think?
Maybe.
I think enough people would be like, no, we want US dollars so we can pay our fucking taxes.
You're right. They'd have to find somebody to pay their taxes. Anyway, I like this, though, about the, you know, I hand you what I know to be, 10 pounds worth of stuff, and you're like, feels like 6 to me. Let me check my scale. And you're like blocking the number. Yeah, it says 6. And, we're measuring in metric pounds now. So that's different than what pounds you think. Don't even worry about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's solid.
The unions really did some great things in the past, and it was just a lot of the modern problems that
they're not, equipped for.
Yeah. The other thing is, and we haven't actually got any feedback yet because the episode just went live for patrons today and is going live in a few days. So most people haven't heard our latest episode, but in our latest episode, me and Steven were talking about the coming of AGI and what we can do about it. And basically our answer was nothing. So let's just try to live life and cross our fingers and hope and not worry too much. But Eliezer wrote a post about this back on April 1st, so possibly an April Fool's Day post, where he suggested death with dignity, where he proposed that we assign ourselves dignity points for how far we get in solving AI or solving the alignment problem before AI actually destroys us. And if we, don't do any work at all, well, that is 0 dignity points, and we just really lost the game. But the closer we get to 100, the better we did, and the prouder we should feel of ourselves before we're all wiped out by AGI. And it's a great little jokey post, but also very doomy. But I saw a interview on YouTube with a guy who works for an AI company. He said, actually, this is a really great way to phrase it, I think, because it sort of gives people something to shoot for. If you just tell people we're probably not going to solve this and we're all doomed, nothing's going to happen. But if you at least go for some sort of dignity points to game the system, maybe some people will go for dignity points and try to have some fun. And that is the one thing that could actually maybe get us to alignment if people are just trying to go for death with dignity and we somehow manage to cross that line anyway. So I thought it was a fun way of motivating people to do an impossible thing.
So who's counting the dignity points, though, at the end if we're all paperclips?
Us. just before the paper clipper comes.
Okay.
Really quickly do some quick calculation. We're like, all right, 67 out of 100, not bad, not bad.
I mean,
It was a good run.
I'm a big fan of truth-oriented view to reality as well. But I feel like if I was watching the paperclip monster come towards me, I'd just be like, I got 100. I'm gonna just delete myself for the last 3 seconds. I fucking killed it.
Nice.
But I like the TLDR at the top of the post. It's obvious at this point that humanity isn't going to solve the alignment problem, or even try very hard, or even go out with much of a fight. Since survival is unattainable, we should shift the focus of our efforts to helping humanity die with slightly more dignity. Just it's so defeatist. We're not going to solve the problem, or even try very hard, or even go out with much of a fight.
Ouch.
Yeah, ouch.
At least that might get people to put up a bit of a fight, which, if nothing else, could delay timelines a little bit, which could get you the rest of the way there. Who knows?
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, our main subject today is Georgist Land Value Taxes, which were...
I'm going to just emphasize that they are Georgist, not Georgia's land taxes.
Yes, named after Henry George, and therefore Georgist. Stephen, what's the biggest problem with UBI that we've all thought is the biggest problem with UBI?
Where's the money going to come from?
No, that's
Okay.
pretty easy. Just taxes.
Second problem would raise the cost of everything else.
There we go.
Okay, is that what you're going to say?
I was thinking something about, people without the motivation will just eat the UBI
Oh,
and
yeah,
then sit around and play video games all day. And
What's your purpose if you're not forced to
Yeah.
work if you have to eat?
See, I don't
Yeah.
think that's a problem in so much as it is a benefit.
yeah, no, I'm thinking that's just if you have a certain mindset, a problem.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that if everyone in the U.S. got $1,000 more a month, then rent would just go up $1,000 a month.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So that said, though, if you just skip your rent for 1 month, you can, everyone can buy a gun and take it out on their landlords because the giant, the multi-trillionaire at the top of this who owns all the apartments who got to increase rates for $1,000 a month for every place across the country.
Yeah.
I think that people would probably just revolt at them.
I mean, I'm pretty sure there's not just one landowner in the United States, unless you count the government.
I'm picturing the people who own the conglomerates of companies that own. There's not one person or even one company, but there's a handful at the top, right?
Yeah. Well, that is actually the problem that Henry George was trying to tackle.
I think, just real quick, my inclination there and thought towards violent rebellion is fueled by the Less Wrong posts coming to you at the end of the episode. So,
Okay,
Alright.
cool.
I was like, I don't usually go straight to buy a gun and shoot people. Why'd I go there? Oh, because I read the Less Wrong post yesterday.
Wow. And that made you want to buy guns and shoot people.
No, he just advocates for it. Kind of. We'll get there.
No, he doesn't.
All right, we'll find out.
All right.
Okay, I'm excited now.
That is not what I got from that at all, but okay then. This was in the 1800s, and Henry George was looking around. He's like, we should all be obscenely wealthy. The Industrial Revolution has increased productivity of humankind by 100-fold. Used to be 2/3 of the people had to be employed just growing food to feed the population. And now it's down to, in modern days, it's down to, less than 2%, right?
We've automated a lot of farming.
I almost want to say statistically nobody works on farming food, but 2% is a actual number, so
Yeah.
it's not 0.02%.
Right.
Yeah.
In terms of material wealth, we have so much, it's ridiculous, and yet there's still people living in poverty. How the hell did this happen when someone working for 1 day can get as much done as one of our ancestors could get done in 100 days? He looked around and he said, well, it looks like it's because the rent is too damn high. I'm going to come back to that a few times because it's funny, but also because it was several times mentioned in this post from Astral Codex 10. I keep calling it the other thing because I'm old and I'm set in my ways.
Slate Astral Codex 10.
Cool.
It's like 10 codex.
Which was a book that reviewed Georgist land taxes and what they're all about. But I'm going to give a quick overview of what the problems are with modern taxes and what we can do about them.
Is the problem taxes or is it rent rates? Or are those related?
They are related, but tackling both of them helps you understand both of them, I think. Because this is a tax proposal.
Yeah, instead of the current system, or the current... Anyway, you were about to explain it, right? So
I was about to explain it. One of the things that everybody hates about taxes is taxes feel like stealing. I even remember a interview with some Afghani peasant somewhere a few years ago where someone was explaining taxes to them. He's like, oh, yeah, we have those. And warlords, they steal your stuff. He's like, no, this is taxes. And they explain taxes, and he's like, Right, yeah, the government steals your stuff. I get it.
I feel like the person wasn't doing a very good job of explaining taxes.
Well-
like I could steel man a little better than that. But like, you know how you drove here on roads and it has lights and everything along the sides and there's street lights and everything. You know how like no one came to your house with and like you know how you didn't have to pay to drive here. That's where taxes go.
What if you didn't want the road? Somebody said, "I want a road. I'm taking your money to build the road."
I get like this is where it goes, but I think that if you explain that to this peasant, then they would be like, oh, you mean like all the free shit we get to enjoy, like, you know, firefighters and stuff. I forgot. That's what taxes do. Okay, yeah. The warlords just take it and spend it on whatever, hookers and blow.
Right. Very important to keep those industries going.
I'm giving a hard time, but
Yeah.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
It feels like that. It feels like you did something, you created something, you worked hard, and then somebody else comes and takes some of that. And that doesn't feel very fair. But we do all recognize it's necessary because we do want things like roads and law enforcement and whatever.
And Social Security when we're old.
Mm-hmm.
Ha ha.
And am I the only person, whatever, I can't help, I guess, but be a distracting wet blanket. Look at this wet blanket over there. When I take a job or I get a paycheck, I look at the number that it says at the bottom. I don't look at how I didn't get 27% of my check, right? Because I got 100% of my check.
Yeah.
Like the fact that I'm going to lose 27% of it to the taxes is just expected.
Yes.
Like, so I take that as part of the cost of working there, right?
That is the point of payroll taxes, that you don't ever see the money, and so it doesn't feel as bad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm saying is, like, it doesn't feel like theft to me because I don't actually have to give away any money. I just never get it.
Yeah.
And so so like what it is though is like my job pays X amount of dollars. What it actually pays is 73% of X amount of dollars.
Yeah.
And I just know that, right?
I mean, I guess. If you were correctly indoctrinated, then you just know that.
I'm correctly indoctrinated. I think because there's
Wonderful.
nowhere that I could do this job where I could get paid 100% of the cost of doing it.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Like I said, we all recognize it as a necessity.
Or if you can see behind the lie, Stephen, we see it as theft. Okay.
I mean, Scott Alexander says that it is a very non-central example of theft because when people steal from you, you get nothing back from it.
Right.
Whereas when the government steals from you, you get dead brown kids back.
God damn it. You went there.
I should not have gone there, but you
No,
also
it's
get
funny.
sewage and lots of electrical power.
Yeah, I mean, we get all the stuff that we like. You know, like you got air conditioning and a fan running in here. You don't have a generator outside running. You know, to get power in the house. You know,
That's
power just comes to your house.
well, I mean, I do pay for the power.
You pay for the power, but like having it come here, that infrastructure was paid for with taxes.
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was actually the infrastructure for internet, but we still pay
Yes.
for that like it's not a utility. But that's a whole other argument. So
Yeah.
where were we?
What?
Georgist, fix this for us.
Okay. Importantly, anytime you tax something, you disincentivize it. Whenever you tax labor, you get less labor. When you tax investment, you get less investment. It's just a thing. When you increase the cost of something, you get less of that thing. What makes a piece of land valuable, I guess, is what it all comes down to. Because you can get an acre in the middle of the desert in Nevada for almost nothing. But an acre in the middle of downtown Manhattan is ruinously expensive, even if there's absolutely nothing on it.
Especially if there's nothing on it.
Well, no, it's probably worth more if it has like an office building on it. Because then you have an office building that you can rent out right away.
You show me an acre of open land in Manhattan.
Well, right,
But
yeah. But even assuming it had nothing on it, it would
Sure.
be worth far more than an acre in Nevada. And the question being, what makes that acre in Manhattan so much more valuable?
People and jobs nearby.
That's basically literally it. The tricky part about this, then, is that if you have a piece of land and it goes up in value over, say, the course of 10 years, without you doing anything to it, it's because the people around you were doing things. More people were moving in, they were building houses, they were doing whatever. The community has gotten better, so you have profited off the labor of everybody else around you without you having to do anything at all. And that feels kind of unfair. But more importantly, if the government were to tax how much your property increased in value due to the work of everybody else, that seems legit because you didn't do anything. It was everybody else. And why do you get all the benefit of your property increasing in value from everybody else's work?
What benefit does your property being worth more actually give you until you
sell it for a lot more.
you sell it?
Yeah.
So
You can rent.
I guess you could rent it.
If you put a house on it, you can rent it for a hell of a lot more than you could when it was just an empty parcel with nothing around.
I guess I'm just thinking like so if my place costs $200,000 in Colorado, 1% property tax every month on your mortgage. So $200 a month. If if the value goes up to $400,000, don't I have to like get the place reappraised or something? So like people know that they start charging more on taxes, or just the county assessor's office determine?
Depending on where you live, they do it automatically. I know in Lakewood every 2 years they reassess all the property values.
But if you want to benefit from your house being worth more, you actually have to pay for an appraiser.
Probably.
But apparently the county's doing that for free every 2 years anyway?
I mean, in California, no. As long as you don't sell the place, it stays at the...
Well, we've seen how bad it gets there.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. As much as it is annoying that people in 1965 were able to buy a house in California for the price of a McChicken, and like now it's worth $6 million, that's annoying as shit. But if they had to pay a $6 million property tax on a place that they bought for $60,000, like they wouldn't be able to afford it. They'd be living there, minding their own business, and suddenly someone comes to their house and says, "Get out."
That's literally the point.
So, just to be clear, Georgia's land tax are intended to be the most fair, produce the least amount of bad effects possible. So you're going to have to explain to me why someone coming to your house with a gun and saying, "Get out, you can't afford to live here anymore," is less theft than someone saying, "Can I please have some of the money you earned this year, please?" Although they don't say please.
Do they say please a lot? Because I'm pretty sure the taxmen always come with guns.
They don't say please, you're right.
Okay. The difference is you did nothing to increase the value of your land. It was everybody else around that increased the value of the land. And you are just reaping the benefits of that. And in fact, it actually discourages doing work to increase the value of your land because everybody around you is going to reap a significant percentage of the labor you did. And if you don't do any work, your land value still goes up and they don't get the benefit of your labor. So you're kind of incentivized to do nothing and to, sponge off other people. And the thing is, we kind of want land to be put to the best use possible. All right, so Stephen, you recently bought a 2-bedroom place for nearly $500,000, right?
3. Well, yes, two in a study. Yeah.
2 in a study. Okay. Yeah. Which is an insane amount of money.
It's offensive.
But it's also completely standard here in the Denver metro area nowadays. If you were to try to buy that in the Denver city area, it'd be significantly more.
I'm hearing from people that know people from California that say, "Holy shit, it's bad here."
Yeah.
From like San Diego. They're like, "This is terrible real estate." So,
yeah.
Okay.
And here's the thing. We have a used store near downtown Denver.
A what?
A used store, a flat
Storage
piece
unit.
of property with a bunch of warehouses, super cheap warehouses that cost almost nothing to maintain, and people just put their shit in it. The people who own the used store pay almost nothing in property taxes because they're a bunch of cheap fucking warehouses, so they don't have a lot of value. That land is absolutely being wasted down there. And if the land was properly taxed at the same value as everything around it, the used store people probably could not pay the taxes. The taxes would be so high, it would be more than they make in a year, and they would be forced to sell the land, and someone who could use it for something better, like a fucking large apartment complex that could house a lot of people, or maybe an office building, or something more valuable could be done with the land than cheap fucking warehouses that people store their extra shit in.
Fun fact, when I was house hunting, the place I have is like a template, and there's another one 10 miles west of where, like another development where they're building these 10 miles west, closer to the mountains, $100,000 more.
More?
Like that was the baseline price.
Yeah.
And I double checked when I was like looking at this one. I was like, this is the same, but the number here, is that just because of where it's at? She's like, yep. Yeah. It's closer to, I think it's Littleton rather than Aurora.
Okay.
And,
yeah, it's not the material, it's not the labor, it's just the location.
And I'm like, for that price, though, I could buy 2 Teslas and have them charged at either side of those 10 miles, have them just drive me to and from. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
So
living in a Tesla.
That's
I
also
don't think there's enough room. Not until they're bringing out the Tesla van.
Yeah, not unless you can take out the back seats. But in any case, I just want to bring up the fact that, the location played a big role of why we're living where we are. Because one thing about my job is I don't care where I live.
Right.
So it's kind of immaterial to me if I'm in, whatever part of the area, as long as I'm within rough proximity to where I go once or twice a month, right?
And the people that own that land and are building that housing unit on it that are getting an extra $100,000 for it, they didn't do anything to get that extra $100,000. That's entirely based on the labor of everyone that lives around them that has made that land more valuable.
Presumably they bought that land at a higher price, though.
Whoever sold it to them at that point didn't do anything to get that extra $100,000. It was everyone around them. And so it seems rather unfair for them, just because they held the land, to get an extra $100,000 out of it. Because really, the labor of holding the land is people with guns from the government telling other people, this is not your land, it's his land. So again, we were paying for the enforcement of that property right, and then everybody around him helped make that property more valuable, and then for some reason, he gets to capture all that value. Since it's the property right enforcement is paid for by the government, and since it's the community around him that made it more valuable, honestly, that money should be recaptured by the community through some sort of maybe tax.
Okay, so I was going to ask about what made this different than other sorts of wealth aggregation, or rather wealth increase. But you're saying specifically because it's a government-protected wealth vehicle? I don't know what to say, right?
Right. If it wasn't for the government enforcing property rights, then someone else would have just taken that land from him.
Or they would have had to defend it with,
with their own guns,
their
and
own
guards.
security. Yeah. But so another solution to this problem might just be saying government's not going to protect your land, your property anymore.
I mean, yeah, if you want to live in anarchy, and I know a lot of people do, but
well, I guess I'm just trying to equate this to like with Bitcoin is another similar thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Someone smart bought it at a nickel,
Mm-hmm.
and now it's worth $60,000.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't do fuck all to increase the price, other than buy more Bitcoin,
Right.
And luck out that someone bought Bitcoin instead of Dogecoin or something, right?
Uh-huh.
And so, granted, they'll pay a capital gains tax on it, but they're not going to be charged $30,000 per Bitcoin in taxes, right?
Right.
So almost all of that's going to go straight to their pocket.
Okay.
But I think the difference here is that George wouldn't argue that we should charge Bitcoin millionaires this crazy tax because they defended their own Bitcoins.
George actually makes a really big distinction between capital and land.
Yes, which we will get into when we get into the details.
Okay, so yeah, put a pin in that, I guess.
Okay, so different categories of stuff.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess the difference, there's a fixed amount of Bitcoin, but land is like a real thing that there's only so much of.
Yes.
Is that the thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's one of the other advantages is that you can't disincentivize the creation of new land because there's a fixed supply of it. You can disincentivize labor, you can disincentivize interest, but the land is there and people aren't making more or destroying, which is not completely 100% true, but as close to true as is reasonable to bother with.
It's true enough, yeah. You can make some land more habitable. You can build a Rapture-style city in the ocean if you felt like it. But,
right. And importantly, if someone were to, if your land developer were to build a house on this land, the house would not be taxed at all because that was labor he created. That was wealth that he created. There would only be taxes on the increase in value of the land based on the community and the government protecting property rights. So yeah, the main benefits is that it makes land be used in its most socially valuable way rather than being wasted on things. And it really disincentivizes landlords, like me, for example, from just buying something and waiting for the value to go up and profiting from that value without adding anything. Because that happens all the time now, and if they couldn't do that anymore, they would have to earn their wages like everyone else by doing maintenance work or providing management services or something, which I personally pride myself on the fact that I am quick and good with the maintenance and with the management services, but also I only own 4 properties. I don't work that much on them, and yeah, I realized that the reason I was able to retire is because Denver fucking blew up in real estate and the rents increased a lot. And if I was working just off the labor of what I put into these places, it wouldn't be enough.
It'd be next to nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how much skilled labor you do. You don't do electrician work. You call in electricians.
Yeah.
So electricians get paid a lot of money, but someone to replace a refrigerator, you pay for the refrigerator, but that's not labor.
Yeah,
that's just money that you have to eat. But the
managerial services to buy it and get it in and out. But
sure,
yeah,
but you're also not the one moving the refrigerator.
Yeah.
So you might be there, I don't know, fix a broken pipe under the sink or something.
Yeah.
Which, frankly, I don't know. I guess if I could fix it, it's not that hard to do. Therefore, it's not that expensive to fix, right?
Right.
I bet your skill's a little more than mine, but yeah, that's interesting. So I mean, what you're advocating here, or at least what you're describing here, is a situation where you couldn't just buy land and hodl for prices to go to the moon. You have to earn.
Yeah.
You have to work to earn on it.
Like everybody else in society.
Okay.
You can't just wait for your neighbors to do stuff to increase the land value.
So there wouldn't really be landlords anymore.
No, there still would be, but they wouldn't make money off of the land appreciating in value because 100% of the money of the value that gets increased gets taken. So the only way you earn money is by doing things like, repairs, maintenance, management services. So if your sink clogs up or if something bad happens in your house, it's kind of nice just to be able to call someone and say, hey, my shit's broke, come fix.
That's the perk of renting.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
not your shit.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's even if all I'm doing is like managing. Okay, I know this plumber. I call for him to come out here, and then I pay him. It's still a service, right? It's shit you didn't have to do in your time.
True, but that takes like 10 minutes for you, right? Call the plumber and have them go out there. Maybe maybe half
I
an
know
hour.
a guy, and it's not a huge amount of work.
But you have to pay for the plumber too.
Yeah,
I guess what I'm saying so is like the landlording itself. Right now, I guess when I think of landlord, I sit back, do nothing except for sign my checks, right?
there are some
So-
people like that. They're commonly called slumlords.
Well, I guess I'm not saying that you do no work. I'm saying that you do politely next to no work. You certainly are working 40 hours a week on maintaining your properties.
Absolutely.
And so I'm not diminishing the amount of work you do because you also put in, blood, sweat, and tears fixing all these places, making them livable.
Yeah.
And so like I'm not putting that down. I'm just saying like the maintenance cost on them. When I picture a landlord, it's like, it's not that you run a slum. It's that your place works because you didn't put it together like shit in the first place, and so it needs the basic maintenance of every house.
Yeah.
And so most of the time you're not doing anything for it. And so
I have one place that I've owned for 10 years now, and I know as soon as this guy moves out, I'm going to have to go in and refurbish the whole thing. It's going to need new carpet, new paint, because it's starting to get there.
But I guess I'm just thinking like
But on a general, week-to-week basis, yeah.
the landlord though, I guess what I'm saying is that they get checks from people who live there and they cash those, and they have to put in, let's say 10% back into maintaining it, right?
Mm-hmm.
That would all go away if they had to like actually, they wouldn't be landlording, they'd be contract workers in their own properties.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what I meant when I said landlord would go away.
Okay.
They would have to
Then,
like
sure,
they wouldn't make money from landlording. They'd make money from doing work on the places.
Yeah.
Just like people would be if they didn't own the place.
Right.
The fact that they own it is incidental.
You get, I would imagine, a higher premium for taking the risk of owning a place and for vetting the renters and for saving up the money to put down in the first place. So there's still the returns to capital.
Oh, and you can still sell it at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I could still sell it at the end of the day, yeah.
All right. Okay.
But yeah, like when Charlie bought this place that we're in right now, it was, also close to $500,000, and we had to put in, I don't know, $20,000 of materials and 5 months of labor to get it livable. And I can guarantee you, the person who bought this place 20 years ago did not pay $400,000 for it.
Nor did they put in any work into, they moved their stuff in. That was like it. You know?
Yeah. Like the place deteriorated, and it should have been cost less than what it was when they moved in because they ran it down a bit. But instead, it got greatly increased in value, and that's not because the place was better than when they moved in. It's because the area around it is more attractive now. And Georgist Land Value Taxes would prevent that sort of thing from happening.
So, can you lay out for me kind of like, in like a specific way, how would this example have worked? Say if the person who bought this place 20 years ago bought it for $100,000. Mm-hmm. You come in and buy it for $400,000 20 years later. Mm-hmm. How much money does that guy make? $100,000?
Which guy?
The guy who owned it that you bought it from.
I mean, if they paid it off entirely, they'd get the whole $400,000. They just have to pay off whatever's left on the loan and they keep the rest.
Oh, but they would be paying some fortune in taxes, though.
Oh, you mean with Georgist Land Value Taxes?
Right, yeah.
Well, let's get into the nitty-gritty then.
Okay, yeah.
Because there's a lot of details to this, which we want to get into. Jace, anything?
I don't want to jump you ahead. I just wanted to make sure I understood what was going on.
Yeah, that's good. It is kind of confusing. This probably will clear some of it up, though.
All right.
Yeah, now I want to get to Henry George.
Let's learn.
Alrighty. So, Henry George has a number of definitions that he uses for things, which we should clarify at the outset here. And this all comes from the post about Georgist taxes.
The book review actually said that he beats words to death to make sure that there is no confusion about what he means, which I just enjoyed.
I can appreciate.
We are not going to beat the words quite that hard because we have a time limit.
And it's not our, thesis that we have to defend.
Exactly. If you don't like this, go take it up with Henry George. We're just the messengers here. But also, I'm a very enthusiastic messenger. First, he says, labor is the exertion of human beings.
Mm-hmm. So I don't do labor for a living, then?
You do. You exert yourself.
Do I?
I mean, you don't physically sweat, but you do things with your mind. It's taking up your time, and it's a skill.
Okay, so it's stuff people do.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's anything that you have to exert yourself to do. Like, not necessarily physically, even mentally counts. Like, it's work.
Fair enough. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Okay,
Labor.
cool. Next is wealth is the product of labor. What you create with your labor is wealth. So in your particular case, it would be APIs of some kind?
Yeah, software.
Software? Yeah. The software that is the end result of your labor is wealth.
So wealth isn't money. It isn't...
Specifically, money is not wealth. Money is a claim on wealth. It says, I created this software, and this software is owned by my employer, and my employer has given me some claims to that wealth in the form of money, which I can exchange for wealth that other people have created.
So, but it is possible under this definition then to have wealth that is worthless. Like you could
No,
work
wealth is never worthless.
but you could work really hard building a table that no one wants to buy.
Well, it's still worth something. You have a table.
Okay.
Labor was not very productive if you made a $5 table out of 50 hours of labor,
Yeah.
but you got something.
They used the example of like punching a brick wall. Like you can exert labor and not produce wealth, but like
Yeah, he did say you can just waste effort, and then that's not labor. Like if you're just breaking down a brick wall, then that's not like, unless someone wants the brick wall not to be there. But if all you're doing is like smashing stuff or playing sports, right? Like you're exerting yourself there and you're having fun. But
actually, I hear you can make a lot of money from this.
damn it! But then you're creating entertainment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to think of next. Is I mean, you're the thing you're doing isn't what's actually making money. Like no one's paying you to throw the ball; they're paying you to watch you throw the ball.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
know?
So
Okay.
yeah, you can absolutely, like, if I were to pick up this TV and smash it on the floor, that is some amount of work, but it's not labor because I'm destroying wealth rather than creating it.
But if I gave you $10 to do it, then we're talking wealth. The TV's worth more than $10.
No matter how much money you paid me to do it, actually, there would be no creation of wealth. You'd be exchanging money, you'd be giving me a claim on other wealth, but this wealth would be being destroyed.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks for bearing with me on this.
Sure.
I figured if he was going to beat the definitions to death, I should at least try.
Capital. Capital is wealth devoted to procuring more wealth. Something like a plow had to be made by someone first. It was labor that was put on steel and wood and whatever that gave you a plow at the end, so that is wealth. But since the plow is specifically there to create more wealth, it is also capital.
Okay. So another example, cars, I guess. Basically every machine.
I mean, it depends what the car's being used for. But
I mean,
if it is a car being used for your business, then absolutely that's capital.
Oh, you're right. Going to work isn't producing wealth.
Yeah.
It's literally a vehicle to produce wealth, but it's not wealth in and of
It's
itself.
like your clothes aren't capital because you would be buying your clothes anyway, whether or not you went to work. But if they were like safety equipment that you needed for your job, like Jace, you specifically wear safety equipment at your job, right?
Yeah, although they do provide it to us, which is nice.
Cool.
But yeah.
So that is both wealth and capital. It is dedicated to producing more wealth.
I think it's pretty much just capital. I mean, I don't get to take the PPE home and use it for myself, so...
Specifically, all capital is wealth, because wealth is something that was created by human labor.
Oh yeah, your employers had to buy that thing.
Yeah, somebody had to make the PPE. Yeah. So it is wealth. But since that PPE is being used to create other things, it is also capital.
I guess I was specifying that it's not my wealth.
Okay, yeah. That makes sense.
Okay.
All right.
Wealth, capital, and...
Labor.
Got it.
So, land is a special thing. Land is not wealth, because it was not created by labor.
I don't know. Did you read the Bible?
For this particular case, we can ignore God's labor.
Well, and he didn't work very hard for it, so...
Yeah, I know. He just said, let there be.
Yeah.
Maybe it's really hard for him to talk, though. That's probably why he hasn't said anything in so long.
Yeah, it's a sore throat.
Yeah. And as such, land is also not capital, because capital is just wealth that's being used to create more wealth. So, land is everything that was not produced by labor. Which is important distinction, because lots of times when people say land, they think, just the stuff underneath your feet, the dirt, the earth. But he's saying specifically, land is everything that was not produced by labor. It includes things like rocks. It includes things like fruits that are on a tree.
Natural resources.
The oil underneath the ground, yeah. Everything that was not produced by labor is land. Once you pick up a rock and you nap it into a knife, then it's wealth, because you put labor into it and you made it into something more useful. If you see a peach growing on a tree, that is land. Once you harvest it, now it is wealth, because you have put in some labor to make it into something you can use.
Okay. And, just to be pedantic on it, the rock, you don't have to actually turn it into a knife to make it wealth. All you have to do is use it for something. If you want to use it to smash something, it becomes a tool.
Or even just picking it up off the ground. Like, I think...
If you have some use for it, yeah.
Yeah, I think the book reviewer was, if you pick up a cool rock, the labor that went into doing that makes it wealth.
Cool, yeah. This is now my cool rock. And maybe the labor you have to do to defend your cool rock from other people that want your cool rock.
You've got a bunch of cool rocks over on the shelf there that I was looking at.
Yeah. We carried them all the way from I don't know, the far reaches of the U.S. and brought them here.
Fun.
Yeah.
So, under this definition, the moon isn't made of land.
The moon is land.
Not until someone does something with it. Oh,
No,
wait,
no.
wait, you're right. The moon is merely land.
Right.
Oh, because it's a natural resource. Okay, gotcha. Okay. Okay, I'm with you.
All right.
I like it. I like the expansive definition of it. Basically, anything that just exists without you doing anything.
Land is
Exactly.
land, the ocean is land, the sun is land.
Yep. He specifically, it was cool, they got pointed out in the book review, I didn't pull this out, but he said that if someone were to find some way to harness the sun's rays falling on land, then even those would count as land. And now we can do that with solar
Predicting
panels.
solar
So,
power in the
yeah,
1800s. Nice.
Land comes before everything humans do or make, and is itself a thing no human can make. Importantly, there is no occupation in which labor and capital can engage which does not require the use of land. This is either as a raw material to be worked on, or simply as a place to do the work. Since we, unfortunately, are physical beings that take up space, we need some land to do our work on. You personally have a desk with a computer on it that takes up some space.
I was going to use my job as an example of something that doesn't need land, but if he's going to say you have to physically exist to do it, then sure. I have to physically exist to do the job.
And your job also takes electricity.
Which is...
to run the computer.
Is land under this definition because it's just stuff that people are paying to use.
Wi-Fi?
I think it was created in a power plant. It's a very
You're
weird sort of
Is
intangible
the
kind
internet
of wealth.
land?
Oh, definitely. Oh man, I was gonna say definitely not, but
People pay to keep the internet alive, but
Yeah.
this doesn't seem actually to exclude that because, like, on board an airplane would also be land, even though that was made by people and maintained by money.
the internet isn't a thing that just exists. It is data on servers somewhere, and the servers were created by people, and the internet is made of software. No, the internet is definitely wealth.
But
Yeah.
my desk doesn't just exist.
Right, your desk is wealth.
Oh, right. So
The space you take up counts as land.
okay,
You
fair
have to
enough.
work somewhere.
I have to work somewhere. Yeah,
Yeah.
until the age of M.
Right.
Which then we'll have to actually decide whether or not, like, if say we implement the Georgist Land Taxes, and then we hit the age of M, we have to. At that point, we have to decide if the internet is land or not.
Maybe just like the server that you run on.
Specifically, that server takes up a specific amount of space.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
it's
if there's
whole...
100,000 people running on that space, you divide that by 100,000.
All right, what's the taxes
We're getting so
on a
nerd-sniped,
cubic
but I love
meter?
I mean, there might be an insane amount of taxes on a cubic meter if there's a huge amount of wealth being generated from that cubic meter.
Makes it like not even worth being an M then if you have to pay all these taxes on it.
I feel like it
do you
wasn't
pay
worth
taxes?
being an M anyway, 'cause if you're... Well,
Yeah, that's
the
its own
Hansonian
thing.
Age of M sounded pretty dystopian.
It does, but
But importantly, we don't tax the wealth, we tax the land.
how do you tax the? Oh wait.
We'll get to there.
Okay, yeah. All right.
Okay.
Thanks for indulging me. I feel like I'm not the only one with these questions.
Yeah,
And I pre-committed asking all the dumb questions when we were doing this.
I'm very
so-
glad you are, because
right.
these are all the questions that are going to be asked. So, Henry George says, if you treat land the same way you would wealth, even though they are two very extremely different things, then before you know it, you get poverty paradoxically advancing alongside progress, literal genocides and holocausts, and the rent being too damn high. So, that is the issue, and now he's going to tell us why that's the issue.
And that seems to be what we observe. We see people with $500 billion on people who can't afford to eat.
Yeah.
They could be in the same city.
Yeah.
Okay.
When society produces wealth, who gets different shares of it, and why, is the question. Because as a society, it's extremely rare for any one person to create wealth all by themselves. So he says, the reward you get from production, because all wealth is created by production, the reward you get from production by owning land is called rent. The reward you get from production by supplying labor is called wages. And the reward you get from production by supplying capital is called interest. All that makes sense? These are just definitions we are using for the sake of the argument here.
The reward you get from production by owning land is called rent.
Right. What you get just because you own the land that the labor was done on or to, just from owning it, that is called rent.
What are
That's close to what we call rent now.
Close.
Okay.
Yeah, what are some examples of... I mean, supplying capital to get interest. Obviously, there's, putting it at a bank.
Well, in my personal example, the fact that I have saved up the money to buy a place and renovate it and put it out there, that place is my capital. And even if I don't do more work as I'm renting it out, I would get some small percentage of that because I've made that capital available for other people to live in. Another common one is when you make a factory, even if you aren't working at the factory, the fact that you spent the time and energy and money to make the factory, you get some return on that.
Investing in anything, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm with you.
So rent, in short, is the share of the wealth that is produced, which is due to the exclusive right of using the natural capabilities of that area. Land has zero cost of production because it's already there and you can't make it. That means that any payment or benefit you realize is by excluding others from using the land or its fruits. Does that make sense? So you specifically cannot create land. It is already there. So there is no way you could get interest from capital because you didn't have to make anything and then put it out there to risk. There's no wages because you can't make land. It's just there. The only way you get anything from land is from the ability to exclude others from using it.
Or its fruits, like you put in parentheses.
Or its fruits, yeah.
I'm picturing like my desk being land, but it's not. My desk is
the space
wealth,
that your desk
but the space is. Yeah. So I'm going to go and just picture a field. Like they sell acreage between here and Fort Collins.
I think this is a lot more intuitive if you think of farm.
Yeah. I'm going to just picture an acre of land out in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing on it. Mm-hmm. So that's just land. You're right. There's nothing. It doesn't do anything. It's just sitting there being grass. Even if it's sitting on top of a mountain of oil or a reservoir of oil, it's still not doing anything until people go out there and do stuff to it.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm with you.
So for our example, we have 3 lots, and in the post, there is an awesome picture of 3 wheat hexes from Settlers of Catan. Lot A, the first hex, is a good fertile field. If you work it, you can get 100 utils worth of food and wealth out of this thing. Lot B is another good hex, just as good. Also, if you work it, you can get 100 utils worth of food and wealth out of this thing.
Lot C is just Utah. Or like...
Wyoming.
No, even worse. What's
Chernobyl.
Nebraska? Okay, Chernobyl.
North Dakota. Not even the best Dakota.
Actually, it's like... it's interesting to think of something like Chernobyl where there is land, but it's like actively bad for you. It destroys fruits or whatever.
Yeah, the argument here does seem to be that like land is inherently not valuable, but inherently worth...
I think that is part of the definition. It was human desire. It's like, it exists... you didn't have to do anything to make it, and people want it or something from it.
But no one wants Chernobyl. In fact, people want to stay away from it.
Anti-want Chernobyl, yeah.
So Lot C, let's not go quite to Chernobyl. Lot C is some kind of terrible, horrible land.
It's Nebraska.
You can work it just as hard as you worked Lot A or B, but you only get about 10 utils worth of food and wealth out of it. Are we clear with these 3 lots? Lot A, Lot B, and Lot C?
Yep.
Okay. Let's say that I own Lot A. I won't be able to charge you any rent to work Lot A, because Lot B is owned by nobody. Anyone can go to Lot B, use it, work it, and get 100 utils worth of stuff. So why would you pay me even 1 util worth of rent to use it, when you can just go to B and work it for 100 utils and keep all of that?
So we are just talking 2 adjacent acres with nothing on them.
Yes.
Why would anyone pay anybody to do anything on a field with nothing on it?
I mean...
to go, like, plant crops or something.
If nobody owns Lot B, you can go there, you can do whatever you want on it. You can maybe harvest 100 utils worth of food, right?
Okay.
If I own Lot A, you can't step on Lot A unless I let you.
Gotcha.
And the question is, why would anybody pay me money to step on Lot A if they can just go to Lot B right there?
No one would. They'd go to Lot B.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But let's say that I also buy Lot B. Now, if you want to access this 100 util land, you have to pay me. How much can I charge you? Well, your other option is to go work Lot C, and you can get 10 utils worth of wealth out of Lot C. So the most I could possibly charge you to work either Lot A or B is 90 utils, because then you would work it, you would get 100 utils worth of stuff, you would give me 90, you would keep 10. That's about the same as working Lot C. Now, in theory, I don't know, maybe I could only charge you 89, and you'd get the 1 extra util, and that's why you want to rent from me. But importantly, maybe, like, there's 2 people that want to work Lot C, and they can't both work Lot C, so one of them works it for 10 utils, and the other guy's like, well, I would like to have at least 10 utils worth of food so I don't starve, so I will pay you 90 utils to work Lot B so I can get my 10 utils, and you get the other 90 utils.
I like that, like I said, maybe 89 instead of 90s, because people aren't homo economicuses.
Yeah.
Where, like, there is a level of spite where it's like, no, fuck you. I'm going to walk.
Yeah, I was
I'm going
thinking
to walk
that
30
too.
miles through the snow to go pay the other guy who's not as much of a shitbag as you.
Yeah.
So like, just because it's more work does not mean people won't do it out of spite.
Right.
But yeah, point taken. You certainly can't. You can't charge me more than I could get out of the place next door for free.
Mm-hmm.
We should probably also point out that utils are short for utilons, which is a economics word, I guess, for sort of just a generic, amount of utility.
Yeah. Good stuff that people want.
An imaginary, 1 unit of utility.
Yeah.
For thought experiments.
1 money, please.
So that brings us to Henry George's law of rent. Rent is determined by the margin of production. The difference between how much you can produce from a particular piece of land compared to the least productive alternative. Because the most you could charge for rent for one of these lots is 90, because people's next least productive alternative is the one that gives 10.
So that's like saying, because no one asks to pay to use your empty field. They ask to use your empty apartment building to live in, right?
Well, I mean, maybe they ask to use your empty field if they want to,
Yeah, say there's a
farm and
farmer.
then sell the profits.
Well, I guess I'm thinking, like, just me as a muggle, I'm not going to farm.
Okay.
Right, so, I guess...
Okay, let's say it's office buildings and, it's like workspace.
Well, that works too. I guess I'm running at the apartment thing because, like, the apartment people can charge me an arm and a leg because I definitely want a place to live, but they can't actually charge me $50,000 a month.
Right.
Because A, I don't have that, and B, I can go be homeless for free, right?
Right.
So at some point, that actually does tip, like, what I'm getting out of using your land, place to live and keep my stuff, is not worth it.
Right.
Right?
That is the law of rent. The margin of product is the most you could charge for the rent.
That's what I was going for, is like, because no one's competing for uses of empty fields, but they are competing against, like, so because it's talking about utils and not money. So it's like, all right, I'm willing to take a the life hit I would take by going $40,000 into debt to you every month to live here is more life negative impact than I would get from being homeless. Fuck it, I'll go be homeless.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. But also, plenty of people do want empty lands because then they can get tractors and other machinery and make a lot of money off them.
Yeah. No. I mean,
put shopping mall
for doing
on them.
stuff onto. But I'm thinking
or
of
make a shopping mall. Yeah.
specifically, I guess when I think of rent, I don't think people rent out lots of land for people to build apartments or malls or whatever on. Right? People buy that land and then build malls on it.
I guess.
I-
The problem is rent. You're using the term differently than he uses it. Rent is the returns just from owning the land and excluding other people from using it. It doesn't mean, I'm like renting a car for the weekend or something.
Good point. I am using it wrong. In my defense, I'm using it the usual way. But
Right.
that's why he spent so much time defining his terms.
Yes.
But I'm able to kind of find a way where I can use both of them in a way that makes sense, like with my absurdly overpriced apartment example.
Yeah.
Okay.
So George argues that landowners oppress both labor and capital, cheating both of them of hard work and investment out of their fair share. Because what happens when the productivity of land goes up? We're going back to lot A and B here. They're both 100 utils. But let's say that they belong to different landlords. And Stephen, you're working lot B right now. And you do good stuff. You take care of your land. You actually improve the soil of the field that you're working on. So now it's worth 110 utils. Every year you can produce 110 utils worth of wealth and goodness from this soil. So what happens?
I've already read ahead, so I've spoiled myself here. But I'm trying to think of a real world example of this. But the answer is you raise the rent.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, good job, Stephen. Thanks. You get to keep the additional stuff that you made. It's like, no, it's my stuff. I'm gonna just charge you more then. Great.
Yeah.
Which is exactly like rent going up, in your apartment.
And that's exactly the problem with UBI, that suddenly everybody in the world has $1,000 more a month. Well, over the course of a few years, the rent is going to increase on everybody by about $1,000 a month.
This is what I was getting to. I should have just said UBI is the same problem as like legalizing selling your organs.
Okay.
Because everyone who's desperate enough to do that will all sell it. And then let's say you got $50,000 worth of organs, then of sellable organs.
Yeah.
Then everyone who wants that much money can just get it.
Right.
And then everything's just that much more expensive. I think it's kind of a UBI problem because everyone also has organs if they wanted to sell them, even if you're, Kim Kardashian, right?
It's plausible. I think that is a thing to talk about for another time, though, or else we're going to run up into time limits. On
Yeah,
our
yeah,
podcast
totally.
It
here.
starts to go into
We
we're talking about UBI territory.
We were just talking about organ stuff before the recording, and I should have just said, yeah, the UBI problem is what I imagine could be the pitfall of it, but we'll save that for another day.
Okay. So yeah, the landlord raises the rent because you don't really have any other option. What are you going to do? Go to lot C where you can only make 10 utils of stuff, or go to lot A where again you can only make 10 utils of stuff, or you can stay at lot B where again you only make 10 utils of stuff because all the rest is captured, or you just can't make that much.
And there's no way to lie to you to say I haven't increased the value of the land.
I mean, maybe there is, but you find out over time. That's why it doesn't happen like instantly.
I mean, good luck convincing your landlord at your apartment that it's not actually worth what they're charging, right?
Right. Yeah. So, Henry George says, obviously, the only way wages, which is the return to labor, or interest, the return to capital, can ever go up as human productivity increases is if land values fail to rise at the same rate as the productivity going up. Otherwise, it'll always eventually be captured as rents by landowners. So,
hence inequality.
Let's take a quick aside here to discuss about things that actually increase productivity and contribute to material progress in humanity. The Post brings up 3 specific things, the first 2 which were covered by Henry, and I think the third one which was added by the Post writer, the review writer. Number 1, increasing population. Because the labor of 100 men will produce much more than 100 times as much as the labor of 1 man. So, 1 man times 100 is jack shit compared to 100 men working in tandem. This is due to specialization and division of labor.
And just more man hours of work being done.
Yeah, but like, if you could multiply 1 man by 100, then that's 100 times as much. But if you just have 100 men working at once, and by men, I guess we should say humans, as opposed to, he was still working in the 1800s, but...
People still call it man hours today. And I've had female scrum masters, they're like, no, I like man hours, it's fine.
Yeah, it's easier to say, and...
I think it's a funny word.
You think of man as human, but...
Yeah. I mean, I
all
say
mankind,
work hours
all
is usually what I say, but...
Yeah.
In any case, work hours go up linearly with the population of people working.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
But productivity goes up
exactly
more than linearly because you can specialize and divide labor in ways that make it get more done.
Instead of having one dude build a car, you make an assembly line.
Exactly, yeah. Which increases the rates of production greatly.
So does technological advancement.
Yes. Well, let's keep with increasing population first.
Okay.
He says, a bustling place is a more valuable and productive place to live than a tiny hut in the middle of a remote forest. In the middle of the forest, you have to do everything yourself, regardless of how abundant the natural resources might be. Every neighbor that moves into town makes you richer in this sense because they contribute to the total productive potential of your community. I guess we already discussed that too, didn't we?
Yeah, but it's a good point to
worth repeating.
Beat home, yeah. But I think that makes sense.
And also importantly, population increases also drive productivity by making things valuable that were useless before. Because let's say you have some iron ore on your land. Even if you have the technology to mine and smelt it, you probably can't do all that stuff yourself. And if you have a bunch of other people, then you can do the division of labor and specialization and all that, and you can just actually make use of the stuff that you couldn't otherwise.
Yeah, and there's people to sell it to as well. Like, even if you can drag the iron out of the ground, what are you going to do with it? Build an airplane?
Yeah.
By yourself?
Yeah. So...
This just brings home the benefit of not having to spend 18 hours a day tracking down lunch and dinner.
Yes.
Like, if someone else can do that, because presumably they can catch, if you catch an elk, they can't eat the whole thing before it spoils. They bring it home, and then someone else can be doing something else during the day.
Exactly. Yeah. And so this, once again, hammers home the point that the principal cause of land value increase is the productivity of your neighbors. So if land value is increasing, it's because your neighbors are productive, and you are sponging off their work to at least a decent extent. Number 2, technological advances. Tech saves labor. More importantly, well, maybe not more importantly, as importantly, wanting to make more things means more demand for land, because you can't labor without land. You need it as inputs, or you need it to work on. And when you reach the productive limit of the land that is available to you, you seek out more marginal lands. So once you've gotten to the maximum amount of work you can do with a piece of land, if you still have the technology to do more work, you'll go to the next land over and you're like, well, this land isn't as good and we can't make as much, but we still have the ability to use it, so we'll still use this land to make more stuff, even if it's not as productive per unit of labor, right?
Yeah.
Which is something that you wouldn't do before when you weren't maxing out the first piece of land that you had.
I guess this is part of like using the land, but one innovation to solving this is that you don't have to just use the land itself, you can build up.
Yeah.
And so, like, I can get a lot more done in a 30-story high-rise than I could in a one-story building.
Yes.
Even though, like, we're getting literally 30 times the amount of work done on the same plot of land.
Yeah.
So,
But that's still using the land to its
but
maximum potential.
But it's I guess that's probably just an example of technology that would fall into this. Yeah,
I think so. Yes.
Yeah.
That increases
Skyscraper
the
is
value of the
definitely
land because now suddenly you can use 30 times as much on it.
yeah.
I mean, it's a huge tower made of glass that totally defies the laws of physics. Well, not really, but
Looks like it.
Yeah.
All right.
So,
Fair.
since you're seeking out more marginal lands to use all this labor on, the demand for land goes up, which means land values go up, which means, again, the rent is too damn high.
I thought you were going to yell it.
Oh, probably should have. Yeah, which means that as you introduce more advanced machinery, the extra productivity they bring gets soaked up into rising land values, which gets extorted as rent. Once again, even the capitalists lose out to landowners because they do not get the returns on their capital. It goes into rent.
If we had planned ahead for this episode, we would have brought booze and taken a shot every time that we had to say the rent is too damn high.
Oh, I would have put so much more rent is too damn highs in here.
Sounds like a fun Georgist party.
Finally, the third thing, improvements in the social fabric.
Oh, hang on a sec.
Yes.
Would you say that education is... You could also roll that in with technology? I feel like that's something that... Okay.
Because you're getting more utility out of every square inch of land if the people on it are working smarter, not harder. Is that it?
Yeah, like education and training to do a specific task is still an investment.
I mean, education's always been called human capital, right?
Yeah.
And you would like to think that improving your human capital will improve your productivity. Well, it does improve your productivity, and it improves how much money you make, but a lot of that is captured in additional rent, which is why, Stephen, with his programming education, is making a lot more, but now a lot of that extra is being captured by the rents due to having to pay $500,000 for a house.
I wouldn't say education, I'd say job, but either way.
I mean, you're learning things. You have more skills.
Learning,
yeah,
sure.
Skill or training.
Yeah, no, I explicitly didn't go to school for this, so.
Education is learning stuff.
I went to boot camp.
Yeah.
There we
okay.
go.
All right.
Yep.
I just like to...
We got to divorce education from schooling because they're very different things.
Good point.
Yeah. Okay, so improvements in social fabric. Improvements to the social fabric that just make society generically better do the same thing. If people in a neighborhood are nicer and more helpful, provide a robust network of mutual aid, start a bowling league and a book club, etc., land value rises. That's because it's more desirable and productive to live in a place where you can, for example, trust your neighbor to watch your kid for an hour, while also teaching them to whittle. Land value goes up.
Where is that?
Yeah. Land value goes up, and so does the rent. And again, this is because of the productivity of your neighbors.
Whittling's easy. Don't put your fingers in front of the knife and always whittle away from you.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah.
See,
There.
you have
I
now
saved.
improved the lives of everybody that listens to this podcast.
I used to whittle.
Yeah. If you got bored enough and then had a sharp metal stick and a not sharp wooden stick, and you wanted to make a sharp wooden stick,
Cool.
you only hit yourself with a knife once, and you're like, oh, okay, that's stupid. Let's do it the other way.
No.
All right.
So hopefully by now we have convinced you guys that most of the value of land comes from not what the landowners are doing and from what everybody else is doing in society.
Yeah. I wish I had thought about whether I believed that an hour ago. But that seems like it makes sense.
All right. Here's the problem. What do you do when everybody knows that something will increase in value?
HODL.
HODL.
Which is the internet wrong way of spelling hold.
No. Wasn't it hold on for dear life? It's an acronym?
Oh, I guess I've seen it both ways.
Okay.
Or rather, I always assumed it was just the wrong way of spelling it because it was,
Funny.
Listen up, apes. We're going to hold, I'm going to get my best tasting crayons and explain this to you.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on for dear life. That works too. I always liked the wrong way of spelling it, but you're right. I usually do see it capitalized like an acronym. Shoot. Well, mine's funnier.
Yeah, there we go. And it's also funny because it does look very much like hold misspelled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, so yeah, we hodl. People buy things up in a speculative frenzy and hold on to it forever, further driving the price up to the moon. And unlike things like Beanie Babies or ape JPEGs, you know that rents on land will always increase because people aren't making more land and people always need land. So if you know rents will increase, your best returns come from buying extra land, not from improving the land you already have. Which is just, I don't know how to say it other than this is just manifestly apparent to anybody who has been trying to buy real estate in any place that's been growing. Like, in Denver, I generally buy cheap and renovate the place and make it livable. But honestly, you're always better off just buying another place rather than improving a place you already own, because the land prices are going to go up more in the time it will take you to renovate than the return you're going to get from renovating a place.
You turn places around in 5 months.
Mm-hmm.
Like this, you know,
which takes 5 months of labor plus $20,000 of investment. That's like, how much could you make in 5 months working a day job?
Well, I guess it depends what you want to do. But yeah, I guess I'm just thinking like property values go up, but they don't go up so fast where like you turn a place around, you put $20K in 5 months, and now it's worth $50,000 more. I guess you could have made $30,000 in those 5 months. What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say I think they do, or at least they have gone up that much in that amount of time.
Yeah.
Well, things have been kind of ballooning lately, but I don't know if that's historically a precedent. I was going to mention that actually just as a factor of like, we're talking about why some land is more valuable than others, why rent is higher in Manhattan than it is, you know, even here.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is because like you're near all the stuff, like we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
I think part of the reason that prices have gone up so much in the last few years is that the being near stuff turns out to be worth a lot less than people thought.
Okay.
Because we learned when everyone worked from home for a year that like, oh, it turns out we can all work from home. We don't need to be downtown to do our jobs.
I think it's still desirable though to live like
I mean, the prices in Denver are still going up.
And the prices downtown are still higher than they are, you know, an hour away from downtown. But hour away from downtown, I think, went up a lot more than it was in the last 5 years. It went up more than it did in the 5 years before that.
Right.
I think because people were like, oh shit, I can work from my house in Castle Rock. I can work a downtown Denver job.
Yeah.
Right. I don't need to live downtown. Yeah. Okay.
I still like prefer to live downtown.
A lot of people do.
And I'm willing to take like a hit for that, for having stuff near me. I've found suburbs to be really depressing, and also just you can't walk or ride your bike anywhere in a lot of them. There's
you need
no
a car
stores.
to do anything.
Yeah, there's no like bars or restaurants.
Do you want to eat food? You need a car just to get to the grocery store. Yeah.
I live a 5-minute walk from Safeway, and there
that
was
is
a
very
bar
unusual.
next door.
Yeah, Denver suburbs are pretty cool, or maybe more. Denver's a weird city that kind of looks suburban. Like, yeah, it's weird here.
You have to go one street off a main drag to be like in a suburb. But if you walk through an apartment parking lot and then go through a fence, you're like, boom, I'm back on the street with all the businesses and stuff. It's kind of fun. That seems to be like my entire area.
Yeah.
If you go
you
go one turn off the street and then one more, you're like, you can't see the main drags. You just see houses.
Nice.
And then you're just a 2-minute drive from traffic and stores and stuff again.
Yeah. I know my place, you'd have to walk a bare minimum of 15 minutes to buy groceries.
It's a long way to try and keep things cold on the walk home.
Well, I mean, not just that. Like, sometimes people are injured. Sometimes people are old. You know, it's not everyone can... Like, for an old person to try to walk to the grocery store and back?
Oh, yeah, no.
That would be a major undertaking. Plus, they could only carry, like, what? 15, 20 pounds of stuff?
Well, you get a little cart. They had those in New York.
Oh,
like a little personal shopping cart thing that you just have.
But I mean, at that point, then you have to go make that walk every day, right?
Yeah.
Or every 2 days.
And then you're pushing a heavy cart too, so like, it's not.
Yeah, no, there's trade-offs.
Yeah. Anyway, so yes,
I think living away from the metropolis area has become less of a pain than it used to be, but still, it's beneficial to live near stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As Henry George says, this is a quote, although I cut out large chunks in the middle to make it shorter. Here is a little village. In 10 years, it will be a great city. Go get yourself a piece of ground and hold possession. Without doing one stroke of work, without adding one iota of wealth to the community, in 10 years, you will be rich. Manifestly true, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
People buy houses without ever having set foot in them. At least in the Denver area, I'm sure everywhere.
It's the speculation is ridiculous.
Some people don't even live in the country, and they just they sign a check for $10,000 over asking, and they own it. They let it sit empty for a year and then sell it.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
To huge profit.
Yeah,
it's hard for someone who wants to live in a house to buy a house here. I've been just renting since I moved here. I thought that I would move here and buy a house.
Yeah, it's hell. I had to buy one for, like what Eneasz said, an arm and a leg, and I had to buy one that wouldn't exist for the better part of a year.
You're buying a potential house.
Yeah.
And I would look at Zillow or Realtor.com and find a house. Okay, here's one that I can afford. Hey, come look at it's gone.
Yeah.
That happened to us when we were looking for our townhome a few years ago. We would be in a place. We'd text Eneasz's mom, who's a great realtor if you're ever in the Denver area, and she'd be like, "Oh, that place just went off the market half an hour ago," and that happened at least twice.
Damn.
You were
hilarious.
Touring the house?
We're inside of it.
Oh shit!
And in that time, it's gone under contract for somebody else.
Just imagining one of those like open houses with like snacks and that, like the realtors just like, all right, everybody out.
Those ones, the people in the house are they're letting people through and they're collecting bids through at least the time that they're there, and then they'll lock the house. These are ones where it's empty and you get to go inside and you get a code to get the key and stuff.
Really?
Where it's not an open
People
house.
let you do that?
Yeah, if they're empty houses.
Huh.
Sometimes they're not empty. In fact, frequently when they're not empty. I've never gone into a house where somebody was living there and in the house at the same time. They always leave the house and they always have one of those lock pads outside of the key in it.
High trust community.
You always know who's going into the house. Like the realtor has to register the time frame and stuff.
Yeah.
So if like, hey, my PS5 is missing, you're the only one who's here today. I'm suing the shit out of you.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Henry George blames speculation for the boom-bust cycle of businesses and recessions that happen because he says speculation has a tendency to press the margin of production down until it's just past its limit, forcing labor and capital to accept returns so small that it actually hinders production or ceases altogether.
Wait, he wrote this in 1800s?
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Were recessions a thing back then?
Oh yeah, they were worse.
Okay.
Yeah. We've actually managed to make them much less awful through lots of government intervention. But we wouldn't even have to if we implemented these taxes, but we'll get to that later.
But that would also take government intervention, though, right?
That's true.
Yeah.
Wasn't he writing this during an early depression? It wasn't the Great Depression. It was obviously that was the 1900s, but it was
the medium depression.
I don't know. It
No,
was,
it was a bad one, I think.
1879. I don't know exactly what was happening in 1879. Probably nothing good. Except for
See if I
Henry
can find
George's treatise here.
So as long as population is growing and or technology is improving, productivity will go up.
Mm-hmm.
And production will start again. But soon enough, the land value goes up.
Yep.
So you get the cycle. Productivity rises, economy booms, land value rises, power production stagnates or stops.
Yep. He also says that increased power of production has everywhere added to the value of land. Nowhere has it added to the value of labor. Because, again, land always captures it. And he asserts that material progress cannot rid us of our dependence upon land, but it can add to the power of producing wealth from land. And hence, when land is monopolized, it might go to infinity without increasing wages or improving the conditions of those who have but their labor.
Yeah, hang on a sec. I found it.
Okay.
Below is a graph. There was a graph of the boom-bust business cycle going back to the 1870s. Clearly, recessions were much more frequent and severe in Georgia's time than they are today. The late 1800s were racked with so many panics and crises in quick succession that some historians count the Long Depression, which is when he was writing it, as lasting for a full 23 years, from 1873 to 1896.
Yeah.
That's hardcore. I can see why he'd be touchy about this then.
Yeah. But yeah, no matter how much progress you make materially through new tech, more people, any sort of advances, you are always dependent upon land. And it can increase how much you can produce from any one piece of land, but you still are dependent upon land.
So stop the madness. There has to be a better way.
What do we do?
There is a better way, according to Henry George. He says the solution is to make all land common property, like some filthy commie.
Whatever you say, Comrade George.
But he says it's not like being a filthy commie, because everyone continues to own their land, in quotes, exactly the same as they do now. You still have your property, you have your rights to your property, your government enforces property rights, everybody has their stuff. But there is a special tax that is imposed that neutralizes the perverse incentives of land rent. And before we get to the details of the special tax, it is important to note that it is not a property tax. Property tax, as we know today, is a tax on the value of a piece of land and its improvements, like the house. So if you're a homeowner, when you pay a property tax, you pay tax for the total value of your house and the lot it's sitting on. With a land value tax, you pay the tax only on the actual ground, the land, the stuff that was there before any human ever intervened in it. So you would never pay any tax on the house or improvements that you made, just on the ground itself and what it is worth to society.
And I think I was unclear on, is George suggesting that this land value tax be used in place of labor tax as well?
So that is an issue of contention because, governments can take whatever they want in theory, right up until the people revolt. So you could have a land value tax in addition to other taxes, but a lot of people who promote Georgist land taxes point out that you could get rid of a vast majority of taxes, more than half our taxes, replace them with Georgist land use taxes. And there are quite a few people who say, honestly, you could get rid of all taxes entirely except for land value taxes if you really wanted to, although you might have to cut a few services. Not major cuts, but...
Well, it seems like it would be worth it to make those services for pay optionally.
I agree.
But anyway, let's continue.
The ambulance shows up at your house and your credit card just declines, so they just leave you on the sidewalk. But, all right.
So the real question is, how much should we tax the land value? Because you're taxing only the land, not the buildings or other improvements that are on it. And by George, we should tax it 100%.
Is that where the phrase "by George" comes from? Is this guy?
At least I don't think so. It was used a lot in the review. I only pulled it out one time.
All right, so I have lots of questions about how this works, and I want to make sure we get to them before we get on the last wrong posts.
Let's do
it. You just tell me if you're going to get to this or if you should just answer. But like, I buy a piece of land and I want to like make money on it. Is that even possible?
It's possible to do work on the land, and you will make money from the work that you do.
Yeah, or like your improvements. Like you buy the land, you build a shop. You employ workers, like you're making money off of your labor.
The business does, but then
but not just from the
right. So, but if I want to build, say, an apartment building, is there a way to make money on that?
Absolutely. You build the apartment building, then you sell the apartments, or you rent out the apartments, and you make money based off of what people are willing to pay minus the rent you have to pay on the land.
Oh, because you're running a business out of it.
Yeah.
What I can't do is sell the building to somebody and make money on that.
You could sell the building and make money on it. If it costs you $100,000 to make the building and you sell the building for $200,000, then you have made $100,000, and that is 100% yours. That is not taxed at all.
How much do I make at the end of the day then on that?
It's slightly tricky because you have to figure out how much the land increased in value, right?
Can land increase in value?
Land can increase in value based on that's the whole point of this.
Yeah.
Land increases in value based on what we can do with it using tech, such as if we can suddenly refine oil, or by everybody around you building. Like if you're building empty land, you're building an apartment on it. While you're doing that, someone builds a store right next door and a school on the other side. All of a sudden, that land is worth even more because of the stuff they're building. So if you buy the land for $100,000, you build a building on it, and it costs you $100,000 to build that building. So far, you've spent $200,000 total. Once you sell it, you have to figure out how much of that profit is from the building that you built and how much of that is from the land itself increasing in value due to the stuff that's around it now. And let's say that the building is worth $200,000. You would keep all $100,000 of that, and if the land itself went from $100,000 to $120,000, you would be taxed 100% of the $20,000 increase in value on the land.
Okay. And that number has to come out of some just magic calculation that...
Yeah,
it won't be based on how much people are willing to pay to live there.
They actually
or at least
have,
not solely on that.
They have a number of ways of calculating what that is.
They have a Zestimate.
Okay, fair enough.
There's estimates, but there's various other ways that are covered in a follow-up post of figuring out how much just the land would be worth if there was nothing on it. One of the ways you can do that is compare to similar properties nearby that don't have anything on them. There's some great examples from San Francisco where a property with a house on it was selling for like $700,000, and a property very close by that was very similar but with no house on it was selling for $600,000. And you could summarize from this that the house itself was worth $100,000 and the land that it's built on is worth $600,000.
That's fair.
Yeah, so
that
things
sounds
like
about
that.
Right. Often they'll just buy the house that's a shithole because it hasn't been maintained in 60 years, knock it down,
Yeah,
and then they eat that cost, and then they build, a nice parking lot on it that they can turn around and sell for $1 million.
in which case the building was actually worth negative money since you had to pay to knock it down. Yeah.
Okay.
So there's ways to figure out what the value of the land would be and how much it increased by things other people have done.
Okay. I think I'm with you so far. Let's keep rolling. Thanks for bearing with me.
Yeah, no problem. So you take the rent that a tenant has to pay each month, calculate the portion of that is attributable to the unimproved land itself, and you send 100% of that to the IRS. So he points out it is not necessary to confiscate land. It's only necessary to confiscate rent.
Which can amount to the same thing, but...
No, well, confiscating land is literally taking the land away from people.
Yeah, but I mean,
the government now.
Stephen's earlier example of, someone with a gun knocking on your door, saying, like,
oh, yeah,
you owe this much and you can't pay it,
right?
Like, so get out. But
in that case, you're forced to sell. You still get all the money from selling it. You don't...
But I'm sure there'd be a nice government purchase program that would be willing to pay you fair market value for that property.
But there might also be other people around, and if those people are willing to pay you more, that's the fair market value, and you sell to them instead.
And I don't want to nitpick on dumb shit like that. Let's take it at what it's worth. But yeah, I think so. Just to clarify too, you're paying this additional fee when you sell, but not before.
It depends on how it would be implemented. Honestly, it would probably be either an annual. It would probably be a monthly rent
To the government?
Yeah, or a
Taxes.
an annual tax thing. Yeah. Right now, if you own a small business, you usually have to pay quarterly to the government, so might be quarterly.
And if you own a house, it's annual.
Yeah, if you own a house, it's annual. But it would be a thing that you have to pay to the government as a percentage of the land value.
Okay,
And so that over a period of time, it would end up to add up to 100% of the land value.
And so my concern at the top of the show was like, I'm some little old lady who bought this place, 1965, and then my neighbor buys a place, and they strike oil, and it's suddenly worth 1,000 times what I paid for it. I get taxed the shit out of this place.
Yes.
Some IRS guy shows up with his posse of guns.
Yeah, he's like, sorry, it's now worth so much because of the oil, you got to pay us $100,000 a month.
And so they say, sorry, but here, your place is now worth $8 million. Would you please go move somewhere else? So that's what happens. It's not like you get taxed out and you're homeless and fucked. You actually get paid.
Right. Yeah. And honestly, you probably wouldn't sell it to the government. You'd sell it to the oil drilling company who's like, we would like this oil.
Yeah. Okay, so I was wondering, like, what would happen? Your
Makes it a
value
softer
goes
blow.
up first, through no fault of your own. Suddenly you can't afford to live there. It's not like, tough shit, get out. It's like, tough shit, take your heavy-ass check and go somewhere else.
Right.
It would be a minor inconvenience, but, like, maybe,
Yeah, if it's that expensive, it's probably worth it to sell.
Hold on a sec. Pondering. No, because 100% of the increase would go to the government.
Oh yeah, so what? You're just fucked. You're back where we started, except for now everywhere is more expensive, and you can't afford to live anywhere.
Technically, no, because you get 100% of the value for your house, and you could take that money and buy a house anywhere else that is of equal quality. And I mean, it would suck a little bit in that you would have to pay moving costs. But maybe we could implement a program to help people that are screwed like that, or maybe we just tell people, I'm sorry, you have to eat this cost because it's better for all of society.
Or some of those gigantic taxes can go to paying for movers. For every person who gets forcibly relocated, you don't lose a dime moving your shit.
I feel like this would be rough to implement if you didn't have something like that, at least even in the beginning, to get people used to it.
Yeah, in the beginning it would probably take some adjustment. But like the point is, there's no longer the thing where you have a house and now you can't afford to live in it and there's nowhere to go because everywhere is so expensive. Literally all the houses would be worth, any house that is like your house would be worth the same amount no matter where it is, because all the land value is taxed and no one can profit off of it. So if this house is worth $100,000, you sell the house, you get the $100,000, you go buy an identical house that's somewhere else where the land value taxes are not more than you can pay.
But if someone wants to buy your house that's now sitting on top of an oil reservoir, they need to pay you $10 million, right? And then you take the supermajority of that profit and write a check to the IRS.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
But that means that you couldn't go buy a place like yours.
No, you could.
You could, just not one that's not on top of an oil.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. You would have to go find one that had approximately the same land value that
yours did when you thought it before it became worth a fortune.
But there would be some considerable downsides, like you mentioned, the moving cost, but also just maybe you're attached to this house. Maybe you've done, you've personalized it quite a bit. Like, you might be friends with your neighbors. You might live near your family or your job or,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, growing pains. That all sounds like it's actually worth the cost, though. I was just making sure that, like, there's no way where some unfortunate / fortunate old person will end up homeless just because they happened to buy a place that became worth money.
Right. They would definitely not be homeless, but they might be forced to move to...
They would be unhoused briefly while they found a new home.
And they might be unhappy. And that is a consideration. That kind of sucks if you have to move away from...
It does uproot your whole life, too. I mean, you have to take time off work and whatever else you're doing to do that.
But if, I got to think, too, if...
But ultimately, it's the price you pay for having
an equal society.
A society that isn't constantly impoverished by rent-seeking landlords.
Yeah.
I just don't think the average person on the street might understand that, especially not at first.
Yeah.
It'd be hard to sell. You need a tyrannical fist to implement this, but it sounds like it might be
worth
nice
program.
Well, or if you implement a Georgist land tax and 100% of the Georgist land tax revenue goes out as UBI, split equally among everybody, I think people would be much more up for that.
Yeah, I mean, that would...
And honestly,
I'd live there.
I think that's probably the best thing to do, because the increase in land value is due to everything everyone in society was doing
The
Why
land
not
that the society
capture
sits
that
on.
value and give it right back to everyone?
Yeah, it's nice. It's too nice. I'm suspicious of it.
Uh,
What's
the-
the catch?
Well, one of the nice things about this, there are some bad parts, but the best part is that it is laser focused on limiting speculation, because apparently that makes up the bulk of inflated land values and thus rent, and it would be impossible to profit off speculation, because if you bought a piece of land for $100,000, you don't improve it, you sell it later, you will only get $100,000 back, because if you haven't improved it, literally any increase in value must be due to the land value increasing, and that is taxed at 100%. So you can't buy an empty lot, sell it 10 years later for a lot of money, and keep any of that money. All of it would go to the government. Or one of these places, like you were saying, buy an empty house, hold it for a year, sell it for a profit later. They wouldn't get a profit. 100% of the profit goes to the government.
You couldn't house flip.
And hopefully goes back to everybody as a UBI payment.
You could house flip though, right? Because the place still becomes worth.
Yes.
Yeah.
If flipping,
you could, but you wouldn't really make much of a profit.
If flipping means increasing the value of something by improving it, then yes, absolutely. Because then you're getting paid you're getting paid for the labor you put in.
Yeah, by flipping, I mean specifically someone who would buy a house, knowing that it's going to increase in value, wait a few years, and then just sell it as is.
Oh,
Right,
I think you meant
that's not
somebody
flip,
that's holding.
renting. Yeah, that's holding. That's getting rents.
I was picturing somebody buys a place and then, like a fixer-upper, does the fixing-upping.
Yeah.
And
No.
then, then you can still sell it for what it's worth more.
Yes.
Because now it's a place someone can live in rather than, a asbestos dungeon.
Yeah.
Okay.
The profits you get are due to your investment of labor and possibly capital.
Gotcha.
Removing all the asbestos.
Another nice thing about the land value tax is that if we used it to get rid of other taxes, like income taxes, no one has to go prying into your personal life or impose burdensome accounting rules, which, Jesus Christ, I cannot tell you how much of work in the accounting field is entirely created by the government. Like, there would be at least 1/3 less accountants if it wasn't for regulation, probably more. But
Yeah, screw accountants.
I mean, I worked as an accountant for 20 years. I got nothing against them, but Jesus Christ, man.
Well, they need to exist because the government set up systems where they need professionals to navigate this minefield.
I mean, they
their
need to exist
businesses-
anyway for other stuff, but they need a lot more accountants because of the government. Yeah.
I'm reminded of Quarles saying that the only reason the Ministry of Magic can employ 3 out of 4 of your classmates' parents is because they're all preventing each other from getting their jobs done.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah, that's a problem because it also makes it harder for small businesses to get started, and it entrenches the power of giant corporations that already know how to game the rules and can hire all these accountants. So yeah, under a land value tax, a lot of that would go away, would make it much easier for the average person to have their own business, work for themselves, and not be beholden to giant corporations.
So why is nobody doing this?
Because landowners
Yeah, I was going to say,
have a
because
lot of power.
Amazon and...
I mean, not just Amazon, like anyone that is a landowner in today's world who mostly are people with a lot of power extract a lot of wealth through rents.
Well, and you're the nice middle case for this.
Yeah.
You're hardly a mustache twirling millionaire.
I
from
do
the
my
top...
best to be responsive to my tenants and keep the places nice, but I realize.
And you have 4, not 400.
Yeah. I mean, even if I had 400. If I had the ability, and maybe like other employees who cared as much about this, maybe I have children and it's a family business and we all care about our tenants, I still think we could do a good job. And honestly, with 400 units, we could make a profit and just have that as our business. But the point is, it would have to be a regular business where we work, 40 hours a week each, as opposed to right now where I realize a lot of my profits is because Denver has been blowing up and I don't have to work nearly as much now. And I think that's bad it's good for me because I get to sit back, do podcasts, write, that kind of stuff, but it's bad for society. And I would rather live in a better society. And so I want these rules to be passed, even though, it would hurt me, but fuck it. It would make the rest of humanity so much better off that it's absolutely worth it.
I can see what you're saying. Yeah.
I can go back to working some more.
Or if there's a UBI, I mean...
Or if there's a UBI, I might not have to. Yeah.
You could also, write and do podcasts and not worry about how you're going to feed yourself.
Yeah.
Well, this is cool. I'm glad we talked about. I know we touched on this a year or two ago. I don't know if it was on the podcast or not, but this isn't the first time I've heard of this. And maybe I read this review. This is an older post on ASX, right?
It's been a while. Yeah.
It's been floating around in the less strong sphere for a while, but I feel like it's recently kind of become a hot topic.
And importantly, the one last point to point out before we close on this is once land is no longer monopolized, labor isn't forced into a one-sided competition. So wages will start to go up. Because everybody's always competing to be able to use the land that is available, that is held by a few people that don't have to do anything except, decide who can use the land. There is some need for landlords right now because there's a finite amount of land. And some people can use it and others can't. That's the problem with lots A, B, and C, right? That works fine as long as there's only 3 people. But once there's a 4th person, how do you divvy up who works on A, who works on B, who works on C, what happens? Usually that's done by landlords deciding, and they decide based on who can make the most use out of land, and whoever can make the most use gets it because they get the most returns.
Or who will work on it for the cheapest, therefore keeping wages low.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that's the other thing. Or who works on it cheapest, keeping wages lowest. And
I followed what you're saying well enough to anticipate what you're going to say. All right, Stephen, I learned something.
Yeah.
Yay.
And then, the landlords accrue all this profit just from deciding who can use what, which means excluding who can use the land. And we can do that purely with market forces by figuring out, getting a close estimate on what the land actually is valued, and then charging a rent on 100% of that value. So the people who can best make use of that and pay that tax are the ones that end up using the land. It once again goes to its most productive social use, because very valuable land people will only be able to pay the taxes on it if they have a very valuable use for it. And that accomplishes the same thing of excluding people who can't do shit with the land and giving it to people who can make great use of it without landlords being in the middle and soaking up all the margin. Because all the margin instead goes back to society as a UBI or as other programs that the government does.
Solid. I like it. I have a thought that is related to land stuff, but also relates to the last episode. And so you mentioned that my new house will be done here in a couple months. I'm still on the fence. I think I've decided what to do with my current place, rent it or sell it.
Okay.
I think long-term strategy would be to rent it. It'll go up in value, almost certainly.
Absolutely.
Even with all the dumb shit, that is going to cost money over the next decades or a couple decades, it'll still go up. However, if I do put something like a 30% chance of the world being transformed radically in the next 10 years, I'll never get the benefit of holding on to this place, just the stress. So I could actually we talked about what am I doing differently on my anticipation that the world might change, radically in the not too distant future. This would be an example of actually paying rent on that belief.
That's true.
Of you know what, I'm gonna just save some money every month by selling this place. Because
it's gonna be stress and cost for at least a year, maybe 2.
Well, a year or 2. I don't think I think the Earth will last that long. But
the one property. There is no property I've ever owned that I made any profit on until at least 2 years had passed, because it takes some time. So you lose money at first. That's why it's an investment, right?
Yeah.
But eventually it starts paying out, and unlike other investments, it starts paying out after just 2 years, and it just keeps going up after that.
Yeah, but I think people, when they talk about holding on to houses, they're like, oh, once I have no mortgage on it and I paid it off
after 30
in
years.
2047, then then I'll just be collecting rent on it, or I can sell it and make a big check. But it's in 2047 we'll all be M's living on Mars. It's possible we'll all be here working Muggle jobs on on Earth in 25 years. But do we really think so?
I don't know.
Could we actually?
You're totally right. If you think things are drastically going to change soon, it's not worth holding on to it and having that stress and cost for those years.
But there's still I don't want to take the up to 11 route and stop saving for retirement or something, right?
Right.
I do think no matter what, I don't think retirement, when we hit retirement, will look like it does now.
No. Just
because I don't know.
It already doesn't look like it. A lot of people just aren't retiring, and
honestly,
people stay productive and healthy and sharp until they're 80s.
Even if nothing else changes except Georgist land taxes are passed, you'd still want to sell, because the whole point of the Georgist land tax is that you no longer get these windfall profits.
Could you imagine the economic destruction when I don't even who would be buying them? If hey guys, December 1st, 2024, we're doing this thing. Who wants your houses now? Nobody.
The realtor AI.
I think there's still going to be a lot of use for land and for houses. People are still going to want the houses.
You'd sell to people who want to live there and not pay rent, maybe.
We still have meat bodies.
Yeah. I mean, it would still be valuable, but you're right. There would be a selling frenzy, especially by the speculators, and how prices would come down a lot.
I think they would tank immediately. Like if this was announced that it was happening irrevocably,
Yeah.
like they would become as worthless as they would be in 2 years. Like now, right?
Right.
So
Pretty darn close, yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say worthless, but you would no longer be able to capture the rents, and so it would be worth what it's actually worth, as opposed to probably what we paid for it.
It'd be like being told that, hey guys, your Bitcoin is all going to be worth a nickel in 3 years.
Yeah.
Like who's buying Bitcoin now?
Right.
Nobody.
Yeah.
Who's buying to hold for 2.5 years to sell then? Nobody, because no one's going to buy it in 2.5 years.
Well, the people who would buy Bitcoin are people who can make 10 cents of profit out of every 5 cents of Bitcoin.
So nobody.
Right, but that's not the case for land.
Point taken. Yeah.
Drug
No, that's a really
dealers.
good point. Yeah. Yeah. Right. People want to hide their money. Okay. Yeah. No, I like it. That's a lot of fun. Thanks for.
Yeah.
Thanks for. Yeah. I mean, this is interesting. I learned a lot about it, and for indulging me on my little side thing about the house stuff.
Well, yeah, I think in your situation, the most I think we can like reliably expect is just unpredictability. There's and maybe instability in the future. We don't know what way things are gonna go, but and in that kind of situation, I think it's good to generally bet that things will be more or less the same, but not so strongly that you're putting, that you want to make an investment in that. You want to, continue to save money and do all the responsible financial things that make sense, but not bet on the fact that the Denver rent is going to continue to increase, and that the government and the housing market and the economy and everything will continue to stay the same, so you can speculate. Did that make sense?
Yeah. No, I mean it's tough. There's some balance between anticipating things being the same, but then also how do you plan for a vague ass emergency? And so I guess you look at well, this will probably happen, and if that's the case, then I should do this now, right? I shouldn't buy lakeside or shorefront property in Florida today, right? Because I can anticipate that'll be underwater in the not too distant future. So that's the kind of example. Anyway, that's something to think about. But
I do want to say something which I probably should have said at the start of this, but I'm going to say it at the end instead. I'm a rank amateur. I do not have any training in this. I just have what I have read on the internet. So I may have gotten some things wrong. Don't take me as a strict authority on this, and I'm sure we will have lots of corrections to publish in a few weeks.
Anticipate it.
Yeah.
Well, and if you're enthusiastic about this stuff, there'll be links in the show notes for further reading, and
Exactly.
that'll all link to a lot more reading. So
Yeah.
you can go become an expert on this as well. So
Yeah.
This is making me want to dig deeper into it too, because again, I've seen it floating around and people talking about it, and I know just the basics, but as we're talking about it, I keep finding myself, and sorry if I'm coming off negative, but trying to find ways to kind of poke holes in it, because it just sounds like the way communism sounds great on paper, but then when
Right.
you actually put it in practice, human nature ruins it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I just always wonder when you see, here's this thing that looks great on paper, and I'm like, okay, but why is no one doing it?
Yeah.
yeah, if it was great, why wouldn't it be done? And I think that is sufficiently answered by the fact that it would hurt some very rich people, some very rich, powerful people.
Yeah.
So it hasn't
Maybe
been
that
done
explains all of it.
yet.
but-
That could be it. Yeah. But I'm with you. The second I find myself nodding in agreement with something, I'm like, hold on, let me start stabbing holes in this to see if I can survive that. Because if I like it, then I'm going to be inclined to agree with it. So I need to fight extra hard to find problems with it.
Yeah.
Whereas if I already disagree with it, then I kind of just take it at face value and be like, yeah, I still disagree, right? But if this can withstand all of my my hole poking, then it seems like it's that stronger, right?
I want to believe in it, and that's why I want to be able to steelman it.
I want to believe UFO poster.
Maybe if we get enough holes poked, we can do an entire episode on, covering this and the various holes that there are.
That would be interesting. And also, I was thinking to talk about, because it seemed like we could go into territory of talking about futurism and how this would affect UBI, and that was really interesting. But, we were trying to get through this quickly.
Yes. So let's go on to the less wrong posts.
Mm-hmm.
All right. The American system and misleading labels.
Yes. Where he points out that all of our labels are kind of misleading on things, because he starts with an anecdote about someone joking about the Supreme Court is the legislative branch of the U.S., and he kind of says, you know what, if you wanted to know what the Supreme Court really does, you should just sort of blur your eyes so that you can't see the words and follow those 9 people around and observe them, and you would find that they They hear some people arguing with each other. They talk it over with themselves. They issue a short written document or two, and that tells people what they are and aren't allowed to do. So if you were some kind of Martian anthropologist who didn't know what they were supposed to be doing, you would probably conclude that they were, among other things, making laws.
Among other things.
Also points out that Congress doesn't really do much in terms of lawmaking. Some laws are made by congressional staff, but the vast majority are written by professional bureaucrats who, if you refocus and don't read the labels, look a lot more like the executive branch. Because if you got a problem with a bureaucrat getting in your hair, you aren't going to have much luck going to the White House, but you can contact your representative, and they are really happy to help. Your congressperson would much rather help an old lady with a lost Social Security check than to make potentially controversial laws about immigration or intellectual property. What they prefer to do is write elaborate budgets that exert detailed control over how the government spends money, which is a fucking executive branch.
I'm curious, if you have a problem with your bureaucrat, or with whatever, a bureaucrat, contact your local representative. They're happy to help.
Mm-hmm.
He's being sarcastic there, right?
No, I think he's being honest.
Because he's saying they'd rather help people across the street or find a Social Security check than make controversial laws. But if your problem is that there should be a law here and there's not, then they're not happy to help you.
So bureaucrats getting in your way is a thing that you hire a lobbyist to petition your congressperson for, and then the congressperson makes the bureaucrat not be in your way anymore, which is much more of a executive thing than a making a law sort of thing, right? They're finding ways to work and enforce the laws in different ways.
So what he's saying here, I guess this actually needs a quick zoom out. We've got the executive branch of the government, which is the branch that does stuff. The legislative branch, so like abstractly, what we're told in school.
Yeah.
The legislative branch writes the bills and makes the laws, and the judicial branch decides what the laws are, like if they're still just, if they're interpreted correctly, right?
How to do
the legislative branch, and what the executive branch can do to do that. So that's what we're supposed to do. He's saying if you zoom out, look at what they actually do, it looks like the judicial branch is actually making laws.
Which
that the legislative branch
what happened
is
with
actually
Roe v. Wade? Aren't they basically making laws?
Right, and so then the legislative branch, Congress and the Senate is actually the executive branch, and I guess then the president is doing fuck all. I don't think he mentioned the president in this post.
President doesn't do fuck all. The president fights the wars and acts as a cheerleader for their side.
But they're not. I guess the executive role is already taken, though, basically by the legislative branch.
Yeah, I mean, yes, exactly. The White House also tends to do things like, we're going to interpret the law this way and not enforce this particular aspect of it. Like, we're not going to deport the immigrants that have been here for however long, which kind of makes them sort of a judicial branch.
Yeah. All right, fair enough. So
the point of this is, what is the role of voters in our society if instead of looking at the labels, you just sort of defocus your eyes and look at what they're actually doing?
We cheerlead and fight.
Yes. They have some influence on policy, but not all that much. The most of policy influence comes from bureaucrats, think tanks, corporations, vested interests. Like, the voters are just one voice among very many. He says the two things that voters really have a lot of special power to do is things that they really only ever do in cases of great emotional arousal, like a comic book superhero who can't power up until angry, as Stephen and me were talking about before the episode started. The first power of the voters is to swap control of Congress and sometimes of the presidency between the two political parties. That's basically all that they ever do, is decide which party controls the Congress and the presidency. And also, in extreme cases, they have the power to overthrow the existing political structure entirely by placing a new party in charge. Although that has not been used for, I don't know, at least 100 years.
100?
When was it that the Republicans and Democrats really became solidified as the two parties? Because I know there was a time when we had things like Federalists and Whigs and shit.
Oh, I have no idea. My history knowledge is less good than it used to be, and it was never very good. So
yeah,
but yeah, okay. So they could put a new party in charge, but they can't really change. They're still playing within the same. They're still drawing the same lines as were already existed. So unless they pull the nuclear option and bring guns to the Capitol buildings and say we're done, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
doesn't he mention that as like, yeah, the voters have an ordinarily small potatoes power because no one dares make them really, really angry, which is like, all right, you know what, you're not our bosses anymore.
Yeah,
and
but
so,
I mean, that it means voting in a completely different power. Like suddenly the communists get voted in, or the Nazis, or the libertarians, or, any sort of third political party aside from the two that normally they just swap back and forth between.
I mentioned something about how he is advocating, and I meant advocating I was going to emphasize in a joking way, but he says something along the lines of like, people can go and take back power and knock over the government, right? But he meant put in a different party.
Yeah.
We'll vote in a libertarian if we don't like what you're doing. Not like, fuck you, we'll shoot you all and take over,
behead the
right?
queen and you stick your queen in charge. It's
I
still...
guess, yeah, you're still putting somebody in charge.
Yeah.
But, I figured, like, if you piss them off enough, they'll take the Constitution and wipe their ass with it, right? And we're like, we're done with your guys' government. We're doing our own thing. And
sure,
you guys...
but I don't think he was going quite that far.
Okay, that's still an option.
That is still an option. But
that's why everyone pretends to be so gung ho about the Second Amendment.
But at that point, you're not like a voter anymore. You're a revolutionary,
right?
Which is
that's a good point. Yeah. Okay. Oh, this was the post where he talks about Stephen Colbert running for president.
Yeah.
Yeah. This was funny. I remember when that happened.
And apparently the South Carolina Democratic Party said that he was not a serious candidate and they wouldn't let him run.
Which is pretty silly.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's the only person wondering, like, why don't they just get to vote? Because that was always,
Well, he pointed out it's because voters are a resource of the Democratic Party, not the other way around. So they decide, we don't want you wasting our votes on Stephen Colbert.
Right. To be fair, this is specifically talking about Stephen Colbert and the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
Voters of the Republican Party are not in a different situation than ones of the Democratic Party. They're also resources of that party.
Yes, the resources of the Republican Party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, isn't that funny, though? Like, some ballots have a write-in line where you can just put whoever you want on the line, right? Mm-hmm. I'm told that some people voted for Harambe in 2016, the gorilla.
Awesome.
Mickey
the dead
Mouse
gorilla.
always gets a certain amount of votes.
What does?
Mickey Mouse.
Mickey Mouse, yeah. So at least there's that. But it would be nice if you didn't have to, like, scribble in Stephen Colbert. If you could just check the box. I guess practically you want some limit on how big the paper is.
Right.
I don't want to have to, look through an alphabetical list of 6,000 names. Especially because there'll probably be more than one Stephen Colbert if everyone who wanted to run could, right?
Yeah. If everyone who wanted to run, I'd throw my name in there.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I can see...
If nothing else, I'd, what is it? Not concede, but, what do you do when you step down?
Abdicate?
Abdicate, there we go. I'd abdicate after a couple months and be like, sweet, now I have my Secret Service protection for the rest of my life. and I feel much better about myself.
Love it.
Yeah. He says that arguably the chief historical improvements in living conditions have not been from voters having the influence to pass legislation, because they don't, which they think will benefit them, but rather from power wielders becoming scared of doing anything too horrible to voters.
Because they have that Hulk power.
Yeah, they have the Hulk power to be like, you know what, fuck all you guys, we're putting this third party in power instead. By identifying with politicians, the voters become less likely to remove the politician from office. By identifying with parties, voters become less likely to swap the party out of power, or cast it from government entirely. Both identifications interfere with the plausible threat. That's the two powers that the voters had before. So, the power wielders can get away with doing more and worse things before you turn on them, entirely because you're identifying with politicians or parties.
I think the reason I thought he was saying go full nuclear with the second option wasn't because he says, voters have two superpowers. One that they use when they get super angry, like the Hulk, which is we can switch who's in charge between the Reds and the Blues. Mm-hmm. And then the other power
is when they get super
and they put
angry.
the Greens in instead of the Reds or Blues.
Exactly.
See, I thought that it was like, because the example he uses is like a hidden superpower that can only be used like if they get really, really angry, like when a comic book hero sees one of their friends killed. And I'm like, they don't. I was like, okay, they don't usually just like go for the third option there. They, in Captain America: The Winter Soldier, he destroys Shield.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't put a different boss in charge of Shield.
It's no longer the act of a voter at that point.
Yeah.
If you're going to still define someone as a voter, they have to do it by voting.
In his defense, Captain America: Winter Soldier hadn't come out yet, so
yeah.
All right.
How could he have known?
Yeah, I'll let it slide.
Yeah. So he's saying that the heated color wars between voters on any particular issue are net advantageous to politicians and net harmful to the populace, because this color war implies that large efforts are being spent on tugging back and forth between the two rather than possibly being like, fuck you guys, we're out of here, here's a new party in charge.
But Eneasz, stop the madness. There has to be a better way.
Oh.
Perhaps we should stop voting for nincompoops?
How do we do that?
That's a good question. It's the next post. He again points out that our instincts, if there was a thing that evolutionary psychology could say in a simple sentence, it would be that our instincts are adaptations that increased fitness in the ancestral environment. And we go on feeling that way regardless of whether it increases fitness today.
Clearly.
Sounds uncontroversial, but I'm sure someone will have to find some way to be controversial by that. So anyways, when people choose political sides, they feel drawn to the faction that seems stronger and in a better position to win. He points out that California had a special election for governor that had 135 candidates due to the nature of this special election and the fact that the two major parties couldn't restrict it like they usually do. But the media immediately swung into action and decided that only a tiny fraction of these candidates would get any publicity. They collectively exerted such tremendous power in near-perfect coordination without deliberate intention, which is the really cool part, I think.
Cool?
Well, because...
Cool like watching a meteorite come for the planet. Like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
But it's cool doesn't mean good.
No, not good.
Okay.
But like, especially the
original
fact
meaning
that
of
they
awesome.
didn't do it with deliberate intention. It was just like, well, obviously, there's only these serious candidates was the really interesting part, I thought.
What's funny, and well, you get to this at the end of this line here. I don't know if you want to finish the quote or if you want to just
Yeah, so with coordinated action, the media could have chosen any not completely pathetic candidate to report as the frontrunner, and their reporting would thereby have been correct. And what I thought was absolutely hilarious about this is that Eneasz Yudkowsky has very strong Cassandra prophecy powers, because this is what happened with Donald Trump.
Who's Cassandra?
Cassandra was the person who was cursed to have the power of prophecy, but no one would ever believe her prophecies.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
But Donald Trump, they kept focusing on him, and even though what they were saying is this guy is a clown, he's a joker, he doesn't have any chance, just the fact that they gave him nonstop coverage all the time rocketed him into the presidency.
What's funny is, like, if Eneasz had made a joke about Donald Trump here, I'd have assumed this would have been evidence that he's from the future. But yeah, I thought the exact same thing. The difference, though, with Trump versus the thing that he laid out was that he said that with coordinated action, the media could have chosen any non-completely pathetic candidate.
Yes,
to report.
But they chose a pathetic one.
Well, there's that, but also to report as the front runner. They don't even have to do the second part.
Yeah,
they just have to find somebody and put them on the TV a lot.
Yeah,
Yep.
And they don't have to say look at this front runner. They just have to be like, look who's on TV a lot.
Yeah,
and. I know that there was more than a dozen. Weren't there more than 20 presidential candidates in 2016 for the Republican Party? At one
I don't
point?
think there were that many. There were more than a dozen.
There were more than a dozen. It might have been pushing 20. But the thing is, I could name 3 others maybe.
Yeah.
And the one of them, got the most screen time because it was the most, absurd option.
Yeah.
And being on TV a lot turns out to help your chances. So
here's an interesting thing. I think the voters used their super Hulk power in 2016.
Absolutely, they did.
Yeah, because Donald Trump isn't either of the two major powers. Like, they both hated him right up until he actually got elected, and then all Republicans were like, oh shit, okay, we got to follow this guy. But the voters were like, fuck all of you, we're going to take this complete asshole because he's the basically third party option, even though he's running as a Republican.
Was like a protest vote.
Yeah. Like a vote to smash the system.
I think...
And also no one took him seriously, though, so, like, I actually heard people being like, lol, I'm gonna vote for Trump, like, as, an act of protest, but
he was the Harambe vote.
They didn't actually expect him to win. Yeah.
I wonder, like, I think you're probably right, and there's definitely something to that, but it doesn't explain the phenomena of people who love the guy, think he's right about everything, and think he is, that the 40 million crimes he's been charged with, or he's been accused of, are just witch hunts.
Well, I mean, like, those are the people who are like, fuck it, burn the system down, here's a third party.
But they seem to actually believe some of this
They were actually very angry, though. I mean,
yeah,
a lot of the people who voted for Trump were completely disenfranchised, and
like,
the
if you're
amount that people, people taking shots at Trump, some of those were pretty low blows.
But these people didn't. They weren't just voting in a Harambe. They were voting in somebody that they claim to believe is actually awesome.
Well, again, if you're going to Hulk out, you actually have to be really pissed off. And the voters really were strongly upset and emotionally engaged, the ones that voted for him. And that doesn't go away just because he got voted out 4 years later. There's still all that pent-up emotion.
No, but you can Hulk out and be pissed and vote in I like just Harambe as the stand-in. but not say he was the best choice objectively and like he's actually a great president.
Right.
You would say, fuck you, this is what you guys get. I put in a monkey in office. Like, but you don't stand by and say the monkey's a genius. You guys are all morons.
Those are two different types of there was he was definitely voted in out of anger, but the anger was coming from different places.
But I guess what I'm saying
You
is that
still
voting him
want
in anger doesn't explain why some people think he's a good president.
Well, you still want your third party to do something, and if once you've thrown your lot in with that third party, you probably are very defensive of it.
So they're just doing the thing of like kind of sunk cost or commitment and consistency.
I think a lot of people identified with Trump because they considered themselves to be they considered Trump to be a businessman, just a regular guy who made it, and he was on TV and he's relatable and he's gonna support business and like fight for their interests.
But then why do I have to go from that to be like, this whole Russia thing is a hoax? Like wouldn't you be allowed to say, well, I thought he was cool, and I'm glad that I threw a wrench in the system.
That's not a thing humans like to do.
Okay,
admit that they were wrong. They'll just double down.
Okay, that's
also
what we're
in addition to that, everybody was very visibly against him in the media establishment and in the political establishment. Like that's just uncontroversially true, right? Nobody liked him that was part of the pre-Trump establishment, and they worked against him a lot. And so you can, if you actually believe in Trump, say like, well, obviously they're going to say whatever they want because they hate him so much.
Yeah,
and then all of a
you
sudden
can see him as the underdog.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden you don't believe anything, even the stuff that's obviously true, because like, well, they're in the pocket of people who hate Trump or whatever.
I guess that doesn't explain the current loyalty then. Like, wouldn't people be like, okay, you know what? You're not allowed to actually become president if you engage in espionage, which it seems like something like that might have happened.
Again,
so
who's telling you to engage in espionage?
I guess the FBI.
And is FBI part of the entrenched power that's been around for at least 70 years?
I mean, he appointed the head of the Department of
also,
Justice.
what media are these people reading and seeing?
Okay, so I mean,
I think they're wrong, but I see why.
So I'm not talking about muggles in the street reading the news. I'm talking about other people in high office government. Mm-hmm. They're not getting all their news from the Washington Post. They're talking to the Attorney General,
pretty much everyone else in the high government doesn't like him, aside from the people who think they can ride his coattails to power.
I guess I would just think, the second that you think his coattails aren't going to power anymore, you'd think they'd turn around and shit on him.
Well,
they have been.
Yeah, some have been, but his coattails do lead to power in some cases.
Okay.
Remember when he when he supported Eric, and then Eric won?
Right. Yeah. This was great. It was two different Republican primary candidates in what state?
I don't remember.
Doesn't actually matter.
Yeah.
And he just went on and said he endorsed Eric.
And they're both named Eric.
Yeah.
But no, it really does help you among some voters to be endorsed by Trump, and so people can use his name for power if they support him.
I guess
in some cases, depending on the constituency, the area, not everywhere. Obviously, being a Trump supporter will not get you any votes in New York City.
Yeah. I think the Post even goes on to kind of anticipate sort of. But it says, you can make fun all you'd like. If you don't vote for a lizard, the wrong lizard really might get in.
Right.
Sure, they're all lizards and they suck, but my lizard's less shitty than the wrong lizard.
That's literally how I felt in 2020 when everyone was like, if you don't vote for Biden-Harris, Trump might get in. And I'm like, you're telling me to vote for a lizard because the wrong lizard might get in.
I feel like this is offensive to lizards.
Yes, as a lizard advocate, Jace Jaw's contention with the analogy.
Eliezer says, make them work for your vote. Vote for more of the same this year for whatever clever-sounding reason, and next election, they'll give you more of the same. So, no matter how clever the reason is, even if it's to keep out someone like Trump, if you vote for more of the same, you'll get more of the same.
I was going to say they can only do that 3 more times because then Trump will be dead, but there'll always be the next Trump, right? So they can just keep saying, we're not that guy, and if that keeps winning, they'll just keep saying that.
He has this awesome example that I like a lot. He says, consider these two clever-sounding game-theoretical arguments side by side. 1. You should vote for the less evil of the top mainstream candidates, because your vote is unlikely to make a critical difference if you vote for a candidate that most people don't vote for, like a third-party candidate, for example. Or you should stay home because your vote is unlikely to make a critical difference.
I remember this came up a lot when we talked about voting, in 2016 and in 2020. And it because I get to do both of these. Because in Colorado, you get to vote from home. Yeah. That's always been the way here.
Yeah.
And so it always blew my mind to everyone. It's like, well, it's such a big investment that you're doing for no purpose. I'm like, it takes me 3 seconds, right? Like, I can do it while watching TV. I don't have to go stand in line all day in the rain, but I forget that that's the case with a lot of the country. So, but you still.
But a lot of people told me if you're not voting for Biden, you are wasting your vote because there's no way a third party is going to win anyway. And I don't see how that is much of a difference to don't bother voting because your vote doesn't make much of a difference anyway, which is true, right?
Yeah.
I think the thing is, like, you can't generalize, like, the don't vote, it's pointless mindset without just giving away the votes to people who don't tell their population that, right?
Right.
So I think the people are like, oh, it's not worth it, you know, economically, it's not worth the time, whatever. Like, if you sell that to enough people, then you get all the smart people who listen to arguments like that not voting, and then the dumber lizard gets in.
But
right?
Yeah, I agree. But then I also feel like, doesn't that generalize as well to people say don't vote for a third party because it's wasting your vote? If I rejected the thought that my vote doesn't matter, so I shouldn't vote, then shouldn't I also reject the thought that my vote doesn't matter if I vote for a third party, so I shouldn't vote for a third party?
Yeah.
Like, they're the same argument.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm
I'm just saying that you shouldn't tell people they shouldn't vote, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. These two arguments are basically don't vote for a third party. Also, don't vote for a second or first party. Just don't vote.
That comes down to vote for the candidate that you think other people will vote for because you want your color to win at any cost rather than, you know, actually voting for who you care about. And I think this is also, you know, how Trump took over the Republicans because all the Republicans, once he got voted into office, were like, well, people are voting for Trump, so we need to support him for our color to win because that's the most important thing at any cost, which is bad.
Yeah. Not a great strategy.
I don't know. I just feel like we've already talked about this,
Yeah, I think
and it's kind of depressing.
Yeah.
I think we did hit this though, but you know, part of this is a you know, from the time this was posted, which would have been
The more naive age.
well, you know, it was just
Pre-Trump.
like it was a, you know, wasn't this pre-2012?
Yeah, this is 2007 still.
Yeah, 2007. That's what I meant. So this was, you know, when Obama was running for president and stuff, and it was
This was 5 years before Obama ran for president.
2008,
Would have still been Bush then.
Because
2008 to 12.
Oh,
then
no,
12 to
you're
16.
right.
Yeah, yeah.
So this was around the time Obama was running for president.
Yeah,
My bad.
This was when, like, voting and stuff was very exciting and popular, you know? There was a lot of energy behind it. So I get why it was, you know, this was worth talking about. And worth saying, just like everything else on the site, don't do the stupid thing.
Yeah. I think it's still worth talking about because I still personally hear the thing about don't waste your vote.
Yeah, people need to get off their case about that.
Like Eliezer says, don't worry about wasting your vote. Your vote always sends a message. You might as well make it a true message.
Yeah.
Clear your mind of distractions and stop voting for nincompoops.
I like it. What people need to do, at the very least, is anyone who says don't vote, it's a waste of time, can't also say voting for a third party is pointless.
Yeah.
So, unless they're going to say it's exactly as pointless as voting. So,
Right.
at least then they're being consistent. All right. So next time we got rational versus scientific evolutionary psychology. Much excite. And a failed just so story.
Indeed.
All right. Should be fun.
Join us for that. And before we go, we do the last thing where we thank a patron.
Hell yeah, we do. This week, this fortnight, Kevin Kirk. You are this episode's hero.
Kevin Kirk.
I wish I thought of a way to tie in something to Georgist Land Tax, or you know who's not a nincompoop? Kevin Kirk.
Hell yeah, that works.
Vote for Kevin.
Yes. Kevin will give us the Georgist land taxes we all need.
I love it.
Kevin, you better follow up on that. Not make a liar out of me.
Come on, Kevin.
All right, this was great. See y'all back in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.